Chapter 3182. It was a beautiful dream, but unfortunately, the reality wasn't so perfect. Arbor kicked the delirious mercenary away, then turned to look coldly in Jing Minyao's direction. "Do you want to die again?" Jing Minyao only felt the anger in her body dissipating. She almost couldn't control her emotions. Arbor looked at her coldly. This woman had been secretly observing her since the beginning. Her gaze was like that of a venomous snake, making Jing Minyao somewhat unhappy. She didn't have the energy to deal with her now, but that didn't mean that this woman could continue to provoke her. She was still thinking about the Jing family's sole congregation bell. Arbor looked at her with a flicker in her eyes. If she took the sole congregation bell from the Jing family, she might be able to use a secret technique to directly nurture eldest senior sister into a godly realm expert. Eldest senior sister Su Shanshan's talent was much higher than Jing Minyao's. It was just that the spirit energy in the lower star domain was scarce back then, so the people in the lower star domain cultivated slowly. If they cultivated in the same environment, with eldest senior sister's talent, her cultivation wouldn't be inferior to Princess Jing's. Thinking of this, the little fellow's eyes faintly lit up. She turned to look at Princess Jing. Princess Jing had been very cautious about Mo Lien and Arbor all this time. These two had left a deep impression on her. If it wasn't necessary, with her cautious personality, she didn't want to continue interacting with these two. Now that Arbor's meaningful gaze swept over her, she would be lying if she said her heart didn't thump. "Princess Jing." Sir Jojo suddenly spoke. Jing Linyao's heart skipped a beat. She nodded at Arbor fearfully. "What orders does the Crown Princess have for me? I see that your arm is injured. I have a good blood-staunching powder here. Do you need it?" Jing Linyao's heart instantly went off. Her expression was tense, and her smile was very stiff. No need. Would this stoic face be so kind-hearted? Usually, when they met, she would not even look at the two sisters in the eye. But today, she was suddenly so amiable. It was as if she had completely changed her temperament, causing them to be on guard against her. Jojo pursed his lips and turned his head away with a bored expression. He ran to Prince Mo's side and held his hand. "We're leaving. Little monkey, I won't take my companions in for the time being." Jojo said to Little Monkey, "Look, they just helped you kill those evil guys. You can keep them with me." The little monkey pouted. "But the rules of our Sun-Moon mystery realm," Jojo suddenly took out a bun. "Hey, I have a delicious meat bun here." The little monkey smelled the fragrance and almost drooled. It hurriedly ran over and stretched out its little hand. "Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me." Everyone was speechless. They didn't expect a bun to be able to subdue the little main spirit of the Sun-Moon mystery realm. Arbor smiled and held her little hand. He handed the bun to her. "Let's go." In a flash, Jing Minyao only saw the figures in front of her disappear. She rubbed her eyes and looked again. Arbor's group was nowhere to be seen. Jing Minyao was instantly angered. Chapter 3183. "Big sister, what do you think is going on?" Jing Minyao stomped her feet in surprise. "You heard it just now. That monkey-like monster seems to be the space spirit of the Sun-Moon secret realm." Princess Jing was much smarter than Jing Minyao. How could she not know what Jing Minyao was able to see through? But because she was a smart person, even if she knew something, she would only keep it in her heart. Unlike Jing Minyao, she wouldn't say it out loud. "They are going to the deepest part of the hall." Jing Minyao stomped her feet anxiously. "Didn't you hear what they said? That little bitch let the monkey-like space spirit take her there. So what if they go?" Jing Linyao looked at her sister with a smile that wasn't a smile, her eyes full of ridicule. "Can you stop them? Can you stop them?" In such a big place, not to mention they didn't know where to stop them, even if they did, how could they stop Arbor's group? This sister of hers, she always couldn't see where she stood. She would suffer in the future. Seeing her sister's sloppy attitude, Jing Minyao couldn't help but stomp her feet in anger. They must be going to get the Sun-Moon twin wheels. "Big sister, why aren't you worried? Don't you know what the Sun-Moon twin wheels are? It's a weapon formed from the essence of the sun and moon. Naturally, it's much more powerful than man-made weapons. It's the only divine weapon in the world, big sister. We can't just give up like this. The reason why she was willing to follow the temple to this secret realm was mostly because of this unparalleled divine weapon. If she could get her hands on such a sharp weapon, let alone a mere arbor, she would be able to do anything. A dark light flashed in Jing Minyao's eyes. Even if a dozen arbor came, they wouldn't be a match for her. At that time, she would definitely be able to wash away her shame. She must let this Qiao Mu also taste the terror of death. Then she would torture her bit by bit, letting her experience humiliation and terror before she died. Thinking of this, a trace of smugness appeared in Jing Minyao's eyes as if Arbor had been tortured by her like this. Jing Linyao could clearly see the emotions in her stupid sister's eyes. Seeing this, he couldn't help but sneer, "I advise you not to do anything stupid again. You've been repaired by the soul-gathering bell once." Jing Linyao said coldly, "There's no second chance." Jing Minyao's fingers retracted. Her thin fingernails subconsciously shrank into her palm, piercing her heart with a slight pain. She hated it the most when her elder sister spoke to her in such a tone. It was as if she was just a useless member of the family. In fact, her cultivation had already far surpassed her elder sister's innate talent. Jing Linyao, a great spiritual master, dared to challenge her, a level 3 divine master. She really didn't know who gave her the courage. Jing Linyao looked at her expression and shook her head slightly. She was about to say something when she suddenly felt her body become light and uncontrollably bounced out of the secret realm. After landing on the ground, he took a closer look. At this time, the curtain of night had already completely darkened. At this moment, she was standing outside the palace's gate. An almost inaudible sound came to her ears. Jing Linyao almost reflexively dodged to the left and jumped up with one hand on the ground. Chapter 3184. The sword in her hand slid across the other party's throat without hesitation. A faint sound came from the darkness, and Jing Linyao's heart tightened. Just now, she heard the other party's voice, and it didn't sound like a living person. Moreover, she could also feel that when the tip of the sword slid past the other party, it didn't feel like it was slipping through the flesh of a living person. What kind of monster was hiding in the dark? Jing Linyao's eyes flashed with a trace of forcibly suppressed calmness. Suddenly, she turned her hand and shone the special night pearl in her hand, and suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. Jing Minyao also couldn't help but scream at that moment. Heavens, the hall was actually blocked by a group of rotten corpse puppets, and there were several corpse puppets nearby with their backs to them, fighting to tear something apart. Jing Minyao looked around in a panic and immediately recognized the person being torn apart. It seemed to be one of the mercenaries who had chased them before. She screamed again uncontrollably. Jing Linyao fiercely glared at her several times, scolding her countless times in her heart, "Idiot." She thought that there wasn't enough trouble here, so she had to scream like a ghost to attract the attention of the corpse puppets. How did such a stupid brain grow to this size? Sure enough, after hearing Jing Minyao's scream, the corpse puppets, which were originally quite quiet, raised their grayish-white eyes mixed with red blood vessels and looked at the two sisters without blinking. Jing Minyao was almost scared out of her wits. She hurriedly shot a fire spirit, but it didn't land on the corpse puppets. Instead, it fell on the ground, provoking the corpse puppets to roar. The corpse puppets roared angrily and rushed in their direction. Jing Linyao gritted her teeth and waved her hand to throw a ball of fire. She didn't care about that stupid sister anymore and rushed in the direction where there were fewer corpse puppets. Arbor and the others returned to the golden door that was kicked open by Sir Jojo. "Let's go!" Sir Jojo was moved. He felt that he would be able to see the little monkey's sister soon. She was now really curious about the little monkey's sister. She had created such a huge sun-moon mystery realm all by herself, and she had stayed in this mystery realm with the little monkey for who knew how many years. How could she not feel lonely and uncomfortable? In this godforsaken place, there were only two people relying on each other for survival. If this continued, wouldn't they go crazy? No. According to the elder sister, before she found the little monkey, she had probably spent a very long time alone in this secret realm. Thinking of this, Jojo felt an inexplicable sense of sadness in his heart. He actually felt a trace of sympathy for this sister that he had never met before. She didn't know why, but she actually thought so in her heart. The group of people followed Jojo through the passage without any obstructions. They looked at each other. The little fatty beat his chest and stamped his feet as he asked, You guys? All of you. Is this how you've been doing all this time? Why did he encounter spatial spirit beasts and mutated plants along the way? Why was he fighting all the way here? Wasn't the battle in full swing? Sob, sob, sob. The heavenly Tao is so unfair. How could there be such a huge difference between people? Sir Jojo said expressionlessly, I already said that it was a smooth journey. Do you think I'm lying? Ask Mata if you don't believe me. Mata's handsome face didn't have any extra expression. Chapter 3185. On the way here, Sir Jojo had already dealt him a crushing blow. If possible, he didn't want to acknowledge anyone or speak to him right now. You'll understand if you watch quietly, Mata said enigmatically. The little fatty rolled his eyes at him in exasperation. Why was this guy still pretending to be mature? Did he think that he would completely believe him if he said that? Hua Tao whispered to Lu Yu, Jojo's dog's hit luck is simply heaven-defying. Jojo even chose the correct fifth door? Qi Xianxian asked in bewilderment. Many people had been conflicted about the fifth door for a long time. She just wanted to know how Jojo managed to make his choice in one go. It seemed like there were several places that needed to be chosen along the way, and the questions and answers all appeared strange. Could it be? Qi Xuanxuan's eyes brightened. That half of the map I bought previously worked? Mata, as everyone conversed, they successfully arrived at a courtyard that was filled with the fragrance of flowers. This small courtyard was filled with rare medicinal herbs. They were divided into different categories and cultivated in small plots. The medicinal herbs were growing very well. Even if it had been a long time since someone had taken care of it, it still looked like it was thriving. Arbor liked this simple and elegant small courtyard at a glance, and he had a rough idea of what was going on. This was probably that sister's living quarters. There was a small stone mill in the center of this small courtyard, and a sword was stabbed into it. It was a dusty sword whose material couldn't be discerned at all. It looked like a plaything that was retrieved from a garbage dump. It suddenly appeared in front of everyone just like that. Duan Yu and Emo Lien exchanged glances before saying, It seems like we have to pull out this sword before we go over. Lady Jojo blinked her eyes, but before she could say anything, she heard the little fatty volunteer, I'll do it. Everyone silently averted their gazes. Little fatty moved his chubby little legs and ran over as if he was flying. He placed his hand on top of the grindstone and gripped the hilt of the sword. Suddenly, he seemed to be having an epileptic seizure. He held the worn-out sword and danced around. Then, he fell to the ground with a bang. Even his hair was emitting bursts of green smoke. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. Holy shit, a divine sword with a lightning attribute. Mata jumped up excitedly. Qi Xianxian swallowed her saliva and shifted her gaze to the man with the afro. She swallowed her saliva again as she had a feeling that she was going to be cheated. Go Xianxian. Everyone encouraged her. Don't worry. Go pick it up. Of course you're not worried. I'm the one who's going to get electrocuted. Qi Xianxian rolled her eyes in annoyance and walked forward with small steps. Her small hand slowly touched the worn-out sword. Qi Xianxian was completely focused. At this moment, her nerves were already stretched taut as she activated her Thunder Soul defense. Thank goodness! She breathed a sigh of relief. This lightning attribute sword was Qi Xianxian only felt her body swaying, and she almost couldn't stand steadily. Her eyes bulged slightly as she inwardly cried, Oh my God! Thick smoke floated out of her mouth when she opened it. Her eyes rolled back, and she fell to the ground face up like the little fatty. Everyone covered their eyes as they couldn't bear to watch. Chapter 3186. Xianxian looked so pitiful. The little stoic glanced sympathetically at our dear Xianxian, whose eyes were rolling back and forth on the ground, and walked over to her. Mata couldn't hold back her laughter. After a spurt of laughter, She saw everyone's accusing gazes, so she hastily restrained her smile and sternly said, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, I think it's more appropriate for you to go up." The spectators all nodded in agreement. She was trying to trap the Crown Prince. Duan Yu inwardly curled his lips in amusement. At this time, Yi jumped out with a swoosh and said with a look as if he was facing death calmly, "Your Highness, let this subordinate go down." "Everyone, what can you change if you come? It's just one more person lying on the ground." At this time, the little stoic had already helped Qi Xianxian up from the ground. She reached out to pat away the dust on Qi Xuanxuan's body and took out a small handkerchief to wipe Qi Xuanxuan's tanned face. She said sympathetically, "Use more beautifying cream these 2 days. Don't scrimp, come get more from me when you're done." Our dear Xianxian blinked, and her clear eyes were practically brimming with tears. She didn't even need to look in the mirror to know what she looked like. Look at her head of beautiful hair, it was all curled up like noodles. Woo as they spoke, he had already rushed up to express his loyalty in front of Prince Mo. Arbor truly couldn't bear to see another person lying on the ground, so he coughed and said, "Yi, come back." Sir Jojo skipped forward. "Let Jojo do it." Liang Qingqing pursed her lips and did her best to suppress her belly full of laughter. She coughed lightly and said, "Little junior sister, you can go up, but for safety's sake, you should cough, activate a defensive barrier." "Don't worry." The little stoic expressionlessly took out a dozen talismans and slapped them all over her body. 5 multi-defense talismans, several lightning and shock protection talismans. In the end, she took out 8 diamond talismans and slapped them all over her body. She instantly felt comforted. Sir Jojo looked at him expressionlessly. "I forgot." Everyone was speechless. Arbor took small steps and arrived in front of the stone mill. His 5 fingers moved slightly, and with the thought of, "Come on, Jojo, Sama is not afraid of you," he used some strength to grab the hilt of the sword that was stuck in the stone mill. The little girl used all her strength to pull herself out, and then staggered back a dozen steps. Prince Mo's eyes were sharp, and his hands were quick enough to catch her. Only then did she regain her balance. His little face was filled with confusion. The little fellow lowered his head and looked at the dusty broken sword in his hand. He raised his head and looked at Mo Lien. Prince Mo's mouth couldn't help but twitch. He coughed lightly and said, "Jojo, you pulled it out." The jaws of his bad friends who were watching a good show instantly dropped. The little monkey's expression was even more exaggerated, and he actually fell to the ground with a clang. Where did this monster come from? For several hundred years, it wasn't like there hadn't been almighty people with heaven-defying luck who relied on guessing along the way, like a blind cat running into a dead mouse. But no matter who it was, they would be ejected at the stage of pulling out the sword, because no one had ever pulled out the thunderclap sword before. Chapter 3187. Little Monkey opened her mouth wide in an exaggerated manner, unable to close it for a long time. It was magical. She silently shut her small mouth. Afterwards, she stood up and strode to Xiao Mu's side. She tilted her head as she examined Xiao Mu from head to toe. Afterwards, she declared with certainty, "Little sister, you definitely have a very impressive sacred weapon on you, a sacred weapon that formed on its own at the beginning of the world. This divine artifact that was formed by heaven and earth on its own and had been polished for perhaps thousands of years was incomparable to those man-made ones. This divine artifact had the most supreme power in heaven and earth entwined around it. Once it appeared, all divine artifacts would submit, just like the sun-moon wheels. Even though it had been submerged for many years, its artifact spirit suppression still existed in this mystic realm, causing all living beings to not dare to act recklessly. Lady Jojo subconsciously blinked her eyes and raised her small hand to look at it. Sometimes, she could indeed feel the unusual flow of power in this bloodline. That was her Fushi greatsword. It existed, but she couldn't take it out for the time being. Her little hand touched it and gently patted Little Monkey's head. Arbor nodded and said, "You mean, the reason why this broken sword was tamed so obediently is because of the divine artifact created by heaven and earth in my body?" Little Monkey's eyes lit up slightly, and she felt closer to Arbor in her heart. This little sister was indeed a person of great fortune. She already had a universal saint tool in her body. Therefore, she was definitely not like the others who came here solely for the sun and moon wheels. She was indeed a little big sister who was completely different from others. It had to be said that the little monkey was very naive. He had inexplicably misunderstood. In order to express the greatest goodwill to Lord Arbor, little monkey reluctantly gave up her treasure and said, "Little big sister, take this Thundercrash sword. It's not a broken sword, its power is second only to the sun-moon wheels. The sword has the power of lightning attached to it, and it also has an artifact spirit space." Arbor looked down at the broken sword with a reluctant expression. "It's so ugly." Little monkey, this little big sister was indeed a weirdo. She actually thought a divine artifact was ugly. Was this the logic of a normal person? Since when did humans become so strange? The little fatty jumped up and exhaled a puff of green smoke. "Jojo, you can contract with it. If even a spirit artifact requires a contract, then this saint artifact must also." Arbor's eyes lit up. He raised his hand and stroked the sword. Although the sword looked tattered, it was very sharp. The blood on her finger was sucked into the sword in an instant. Then, the tattered sword that was covered in dust released a strange light. The rusty stains on the body of the sword peeled off inch by inch, revealing a treasured sword that was flickering with purple light. The 3-foot-long sword was incomparably sharp. With a flick of his finger, the sword immediately let out a buzzing sound that lasted for a long time. Xiao Mu felt a bit more joy toward it in her heart. She raised her hand to stroke this treasured sword and joyfully thought in her heart, it wasn't freaking a bitter journey of 1,000 miles in vain. He had obtained a peerless sword on this trip. Then he thought about the sword techniques recorded in the Spirit Division record. He quickly found a sword technique that could complement this Thundercrash sword and unleash great power. Chapter 3188. Arbor withdrew Thunderclap into her conscious and reflexively checked the situation in her conscious. Her current liquefied conscious had already expanded. It was originally a jade ribbon-like stream, but now it had grown to the size of a river. Her liquefied spiritual conscious swayed as it flowed in the small river. It appeared very peaceful and tranquil. Above the river, the Golden Talisman Jade Tome and the Spirit Division record quietly hung. The Tianji treasure blueprint, ferrule, club, cauldron, startled swan dagger, boat, and other items also slowly flowed around the 12 jade slips in a miniature form. Apart from this, there were 2 more items in her conscious. They were the heavenly horsetail feather and the mechanism map that she had swindled from Qin Chi and Lu Zheng not long ago. At this time, Thunderclap also flew over and proudly circled around the Golden Talisman Jade Tome. Then, it ran over to stir up trouble and lightly bumped the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron in Arbor's conscious with its tail. The 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron was unperturbed and ignored this fellow. Lady Jojo was afraid that it would stir up trouble and give her a headache, so she used her divine sense to stop it. After seeing that it quietly hung beside the Golden Talisman Jade Tome and didn't cause any more trouble, she withdrew her divine sense from her conscious with satisfaction. "Little monkey." Lady Jojo turned to look at her and said, "What other treasures do you have? Look, I still have so many companions." Little monkey suddenly showed an angry expression and then roared, "Except for the few of them, the others have been eliminated long ago." She was naturally referring to Qi Xianxian and the others who had been eliminated except for Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. If it weren't for this little sister, they would have been kicked out of the hall long ago. How could they continue to stay here and watch? Lady Jojo blinked and was about to have a good chat with this petty little monkey when the door to that room suddenly opened on its own. Arbor's group simultaneously turned their gazes to the room. A faint figure floated out from inside. Her long hair hung loosely to her knees, and she wore a dark purple close-fitting robe with narrow sleeves. A faint smile appropriately hung on her ethereal and beautiful face. This girl was too beautiful. Lady Qiao Qiao glanced at her and her eyes lit up. Jojo swore that she had never seen a girl more beautiful than the girl in front of her. She suddenly waved at her, and Qiao Qiao ran over to the girl's side. Emolien quickly called out, "Jojo?" Arbor turned her head and waved her little hand at him, indicating that she was not controlled by the girl's powerful spirit. She was very conscious and wanted to get close to the girl. Sir Jojo could sense the strength of this girl's soul. The ancient aura that seemed to have existed between heaven and earth for thousands of years seemed to have flowed out from an ancient scroll of history. It was quiet and elegant, and it constantly touched people's hearts. This girl had an inexplicable powerful aura that made people want to get close to her. She looked at Jojo with a smile, and Jojo looked back at her expressionlessly. It was as if a beautiful painting had been frozen in time. In this small green courtyard, everyone's eyes were on the two of them at this moment. Although it was the first time they met, some people's auras were very compatible even when they first met. For example, the two people in front of them gave off a feeling that they were rather harmonious. Chapter 3189. I'm Emo. What about you? Although her smile was faint, it made people feel a great attraction force. Jojo. Sir Jojo blinked his black almond eyes. Your little monkey's older sister. As he spoke, Sir Jojo thought about why little monkey was silent. He hurriedly turned to look at her. He saw the child standing dazedly beside Emolien with red eyes. Her small shoulders drooped. She looked like she wanted to come over but didn't dare to. Emo raised her hand and waved at little monkey. The little monkey burst into tears and ran forward, jumping into Mo's arms. Unfortunately, Emo was only an illusion. In a split second, the little monkey passed through the illusory figure. Then, it turned its head and stared blankly at Emo Tienga. It called out sadly, "Big sister?" "I'm sorry." Mo's voice was weak. "Little monkey, I don't want you to see me like this." This was why she didn't want to show herself to little monkey even though half of her divine sense existed here. Moreover, this half of her divine sense had been here for 200 to 300 years. In the end, it was about to run out of soul power and dissipate. "Older sister, when are you coming back?" "Little monkey, I can't come back," Emo said softly. "Why? You said you'd always be with me." The little monkey's eyes turned red and red. Suddenly, he burst into tears. "You liar." She waited for her for 200 to 300 years. She guarded her obsession alone and watched over this secret realm for a long time. She wanted to wait for her to come back. But now, she was telling her that this obsession she couldn't guard it anymore. Emo wanted to pat little monkey's head, but her hand passed through little monkey's withered hair. She looked at little monkey and said softly, "Older sister doesn't have much time left. Can you let me finish?" She turned to look at Arbor. A faint smile appeared on her face. "Jojo, I sense a familiar aura from you." She floated a few steps closer to Lord Jojo and said in a faint voice, "That's the aura of the void. I was once exiled to the void for 3,000 years. This mystic realm has always been drifting in the void. It drifts to wherever it goes." She looked indifferently into the distance, as if she was looking at an unknown space-time. She reached out and patted Arbor's head. "You too." Sir Jojo's heart seemed to have been touched. He stood there in a daze, staring at her blankly. Suddenly, a scene like this appeared in front of her eyes. An expressionless little girl was floating in the boundless void. What does the void look like? It was darker and purer than the night. Because no matter how dark the night was, there would always be stars and moonlight. But the void didn't. There was nothing in the void. It was as if Jojo was the only person left in the world at that time. Jojo walked slowly in the void. She couldn't see the road ahead and didn't know where to go. There was no living thing in the void. She didn't know if she should stop, but she firmly believed that if she stopped, she would die. No matter if she floated or walked, she always felt that she was moving. She was the only living thing in the void. Chapter 3190. Jojo didn't know how many years she had been drifting in the void. Until one day, she suddenly saw 3 lightning flashes chasing after a piece of withered wood and continuously striking it. She used all her strength to fight against these 3 lightning flashes for a while and exhausted herself, but she still managed to protect half of the withered wood. Although this was only half a piece of withered wood that was on the brink of death, the little girl felt like she was hugging a ray of light when she hugged it. Although she was still drifting aimlessly in this void, she still believed that this half-piece of withered wood had vitality. She didn't know how much time had passed that day. The half-piece of withered wood suddenly spoke. "My name is Chiochio, Chiochio, Jojo." Jojo. Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others were anxious. When they saw her standing there in a daze, as if she was bewitched, they hastily ran up and shook her small body repeatedly. Arbor returned to her senses, and her eyes unwittingly swelled. She understood the feeling of drifting in the void all too well. No wonder Mo said there was a familiar void aura on her body. That was the same aura between the two of them. Mo said she had drifted in the void for 3,000 years. If that was the case, then perhaps Jojo would be drifting for even longer. Jojo already didn't remember, and she didn't want to remember these things. Those lonely and destroyed years in the void had already passed forever. Arbor glanced at the group of little friends that had gathered around her and suddenly smiled faintly. "I'm fine." Mo smiled at her and looked at the people around her. "Ciao ciao, help me take little monkey out of here. I can give you this entire mystic realm. Except for the sun-moon wheels." Mo paused, as if to explain to Jojo. "The sun-moon wheels are my natal weapons and have been with me for a very, very long time. They won't obey anyone other than me, so I sealed them in the center of the mystic realm to maintain the operation of this entire mystic realm. Go and remove the seal. The sun and moon wheels will follow my aura. Once the sun and moon wheels leave, the entire mystic realm will collapse. Before that happens, you just have to take the mystic realm away." In other words, this senior called Mo wanted to give the entire sun-moon mystery realm to their Charles as a gift. When the onlookers heard this shocking news, they only silently digested it for half a second before collectively calming down. There was nothing that their Qiao could not encounter. "Little monkey, you can leave." Little monkey shook his head and looked at his sister with teary eyes. Big sister has already left this place for another space-time. She will never be able to return. She looked sadly at the crying little monkey. "I didn't fulfill my promise. I'm sorry. Little monkey, when I was in the sect, I wasted a lot of time chasing after a boundless dream. Whatever I've learned, I've only scratched the surface. There's no way I can undo the mysterious suppressive drug in your body. In the future, please ask this little sister to treat you properly." "Jojo." Mo looked up at Arbor and smiled. "I'm going to disappear now. Can you help me take care of little monkey? She's very obedient, so you don't have to worry about her." Arbor nodded. Mo smiled faintly and nodded. "Jojo, you're much luckier than me. Although I suffered a lot in the void." Chapter 3191. However, all the torment simply pales in comparison to the current happiness. Mo raised her small hand, subconsciously wanting to touch Arbor's face. However, she quickly discovered that she was merely a shadow, and all of this was merely frustration. A faint bitterness appeared on her lips. "It's truly regretful that I didn't get to know you in my life." Arbor's heart ached, and he tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Little monkey, I'll do my best." "Thank you." Mo smiled. Without any warning, she dispersed faintly like a broken shadow under the sun, abruptly disappearing between heaven and earth. Even after a long time, Arbor could still vaguely remember that smile of hers. It was faint and serene, like a lonely icicle flower in the depths of the ocean. It emitted a faint fragrance, endlessly attracting people. The little monkey started bawling bitterly. Arbor didn't stop her. She needed to release the grief in her heart to her heart's content. She had already waited for 200 to 300 years in vain. 200 to 300 years of obsessive waiting, 200 to 300 years of bitter waiting. In the end, all she got in return was nothing. Arbor's eyes stung a bit. Although the little monkey wasn't very intelligent, she was still a smart child. After crying for a while, she asked Arbor in a choked voice, "She's dead, right?" "She's a liar. She's lying to me. She didn't go to another space-time at all. She's dead, completely dead, right? She left that strand of divine intent behind, waiting for someone who can take me out of this mystic realm. Because she knew that I wouldn't be able to get out on my own." As she spoke, her tears continued to fall. Arbor, Mo Lien, and Duan Yu were all smart people, so they already knew Mo's true intentions long ago. She used all the wealth in the entire Sun-Moon mystic realm in exchange for the little monkey's freedom. This was her ultimate goal in keeping that strand of divine intent hanging around. The little monkey lay in Arbor's arms and bawled, heartbroken. She's dead, right? Xiao Mu stroked that child's head and nodded lightly. You can't sense a trace of her presence here anymore. Her soul had completely dispersed between heaven and earth, leaving no trace behind. But who knows? Arbor tried to talk to the little monkey in a relaxed tone. There are many things in this world that we don't know. Perhaps Big Sister was really like what she said and went to live in another time and space? That's still unknown. Amitba. Benefactor, the dead cannot be brought back to life. My condolences. Moreover, don't listen to the nonsense of the benefactress and still have delusions in your heart. A human's soul has already dissipated, and it is impossible for him to go to some other time and space to be reborn. If you're still worried, this little monk can help you release the soul from purgatory. Recite the rebirth mantra. The corners of everyone's mouth twitched. For a moment, they really wanted to beat up the little monk. The little monk was speaking in a methodical manner, and his expression was very serious when he was muttering. Mr. Jojo, who had been exposed, was speechless. The little monkey turned around and glared at him. The little monk put his palms together and asked aggrievedly, "Did this little monk say something wrong?" Everyone rolled their eyes in unison. The little monk shuffled closer to Emolien and tugged at the hem of Emolien's clothes with his chubby little hand. Emolien looked down at him and said in amusement and annoyance, "If you keep muttering like this, I won't let you eat vegetarian buns tonight." Chapter 3192. When the little monk heard this, he quickly shut his small mouth. Arbor held Little Monkey's hand and stood up. "Little Monkey, I'll preserve this mystic realm completely. You can still live here in the future, okay?" Little Monkey's eyes reddened as she sniffed. "Really? Really?" Arbor nodded at her and pulled her out of the courtyard. "Let's go. We'll talk after we get out. Miss Jojo, if we go out now, there are a lot of ugly monsters outside." Arbor paused and immediately thought of the corpse puppets that were transferred into the mystic realm. Anger flashed through her eyes. "Then we have to go out and clean up these things as soon as possible. We can't let them destroy anything here and waste Mo's efforts." Little Monkey nodded his head vigorously. "Then I'll send you out. You have to be careful. Don't worry. We're experienced enough to deal with those guys." Little Fatty crossed his arms and said with a black face. In the blink of an eye, Arbor's group was transported out of the hall. As soon as they steadied themselves, they smelled a fishy stench. Time and space had changed to the scene under the blazing sun. A large group of corpse puppets were gathered together and trying to kill Princess Jing's group. Princess Jing and Jing Minyao's group, as well as the students from Flying Sword, Hong Residence, and Blue Ocean Academy, were already exhausted. The sudden addition of Arbor's group made them feel invigorated. Jing Minyao glanced at Arbor unhappily. Although she didn't get along with this little crown princess, she had to admit that Arbor's group came at the right time. With the addition of this main force, they swept through the corpse puppets like a large-scale siege weapon. In just half an incense's time, more than half of the corpse puppets were cleared out. Jing Linyao wiped away her sweat. When she turned around, her eyes shrunk slightly. This group of people's fighting strength was really strong. But in reality, most of them hadn't reached the level of a level 10 great spiritual master. But their attacks were fast and accurate, and the way they attacked was extremely strange. Often, before the corpse puppets could react, two swords would attack at the same time and directly cut off their heads. What was even more shocking was that these people fought without any regard for their lives. However, up until now, not a single one of them had been injured. Not only that, when the people from Ice-Sealed City and Fire City killed a large group of zombies, the little crown princess actually followed behind them to pick up the scraps. This was really unbearable to look at. The young crown prince consort was in charge of cleaning up the battlefield at the back. Her hands were fast, and her sword was even faster. With just a few strokes, she had pulled out quite a number of crystal cores and collected them all into a small pouch. Seeing this, Jing Minyao was so angry that her heart trembled in pain. Just now, they were fighting to the death with the zombies outside. Their legs were trembling and their bodies were weak. They simply didn't have the time to collect the crystal cores on the ground. Who knew that the little crown princess would take advantage of it? It didn't matter if the crystal cores were swept away by their group or not. As long as the little crown princess took a fancy to them, they would all be swept away. Jing Minyao opened her mouth and wanted to shout, but what came out was heavy breathing. She was really too tired. At this moment, the hand holding the sword was still slightly trembling. Even if she opened her mouth, she didn't have the strength to quarrel with Arbor. Chapter 3193. Roar. The last corpse puppet was shot in the head by Situ-yi, and its roar stopped abruptly. Jing Minyao sat on the ground and gasped for breath. Arbor frowned and stuffed the corpse puppets' bodies into a storage talisman. He planned to bring them out and have Jojo's lotus burn them along with the talisman. After temporarily dealing with the corpse puppets, Arbor gave Prince Mo a look. The latter immediately understood and quickly flew to Jojo's side and took her hand. The young couple turned and ran towards the center of the Sun-Moon Hidden Realm. With the little monkey's guidance, the location of the Sun-Moon wheels was quickly determined. Where are they going? Jing Minyao hastily shot up from the ground. When she saw Xiao Mu running off with Crown Prince Mo in tow, intense jealousy flashed past her eyes. Third sister, when the corpse puppets pounced, you weren't injured, right? Jing Linyao suddenly stopped her and looked at her with a frown. Jing Minyao immediately showed an angry expression. What are you talking about? I have a divine armor protecting me, how could I be injured? Jing Linyao said indifferently. Although you have a divine armor, it can only protect the front of your chest and back. You still need to check the rest of your body carefully. You should worry about yourself. Jing Minyao snappily glared at Princess Jing and grinned mockingly. Although your spirit armor covers a large area, it won't be able to withstand the claws of the current corpse puppet. Princess Jing looked at her deeply, but didn't say anything in the end. She turned and ran in the direction Prince Mo and Arbor ran away. Jing Minyao was so angry that her mouth twitched. She threw the water bag in her hand to the ground. You're always lecturing people. She saw Jing Linyao run away and stomped her feet in anger. She quickly got up and followed. On the other side, when Arbor and Emolien's group arrived at the center of the Sun-Moon wheels, they saw many people standing there and fighting fiercely. The people fighting were Huang Yang, the strong man by Madame Gui's side. The other person was one of the Dafeng tribe's Queen Fu Sha's subordinates. The people sitting in a circle were now looking at Xiao Mu and Mo Lian's group, who had just appeared, with very complicated expressions. Damn it, why did they come here? Everyone felt a bit angry. It hadn't been easy for them to reach an agreement. They would compete here, and at that time, they would be able to determine who was the owner of the Sun-Moon twin wheels. But now, it's over, it's over. The people they didn't want to come here the most were here. Ba Shu's face changed, and he secretly glanced at Arbor's group. With the number of people in Xiao Mu's group, it was destined that they did not dare to rashly attack them. Even if they wanted to, they didn't have the strength. The Holy Sun stood up from the crowd and nodded at Arbor's group. He explained to them calmly, everyone has decided to compete to determine who is the real owner of the Sun-Moon wheels. You came at the right time, just in time for this competition. Arbor saw that the Holy Sun's expression was very open. It didn't seem like he was pretending to be polite. He couldn't help but be curious. Didn't the Sun-Moon Temple enter the hidden territory so many times for the Sun-Moon wheels? Why did the Holy Sun act like he didn't care about it at all? He didn't know if the Holy Sun had his own plans. Chapter 3194. The little fellow has some doubts in her heart, but her face is expressionless as she glances at the saint and asks, "Oh, how do we compete?" Saint Mi Yen smiles. Like this Huang Yang, he has already won 3 rounds in a row. Currently, the ownership of the Sun-Moon twin wheels belongs to him. That is to say, as long as the person who goes up to fight can stand at the end with a smile, the Sun-Moon twin wheels will belong to him. Arbor curls her lips and rolls up her little sleeves. I'll go. Let's play with these people. No. A sharp voice suddenly interrupts Arbor's words. Arbor looks curiously at that person and sees that the agitated person is Chen Baojia. What reason do you have to say no? Miss Chiao says unconcernedly, can you make the decision here? Didn't she see that even the saint invited them to join the team? A mere Chen Baojia wants to stop them, it's simply hilarious. I don't agree. Chen Baojia's expression is very ugly as she shakes her head and says, just now, we have already decided to compete with the number of people. If we add more people halfway now, it will be very unfair to those who have already competed. The others are already in a mess, and when they see Lord Jojo, they are very flustered. Hearing Chen Baojia's words, they quickly echo in unison, saying that Lord Jojo and the others are not allowed to join, otherwise, it will be breaking the competition rules and so on. Lord Jojo looks at them expressionlessly and reaches out to tug at her husband's sleeve. Mo Lien can't help but find it funny. She says with a cold face, since it's a fair competition, why not wait for everyone in the mystic realm to come before competing? You all have selfish motives, so it's normal that the previous competition didn't count. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal is someone who likes to watch a show. Hearing this, he quickly nods and says, let's compete again, let's compete again. Thus, the faces of Huang Yang and the others instantly turn ugly. Haha. At this moment, a slightly shrill voice comes from behind the crowd. These friends are right. Since it's a competition for the Sun-Moon Twin Wheels, how can we miss out? While they were talking, a shifty-eyed man walked over from the end of the path with dozens of men with round waists and thick arms. As soon as they arrived, everyone's expression changed again. Ba Shu jumped to his feet and pointed at them. You dare to come here? He yelled. These people were the mercenaries who had accepted the killing mission. The one leading them was Cheong Hao from the Shi Lang mercenary group. It wasn't until the little stoic saw the person clearly that she had a slight impression of him. Her little hand subconsciously tugged at her husband's sleeve. Mo Lien looked down at her and couldn't help but nod. That's him. The one we met in the north-facing Great Forest, the Shi Lang mercenary group. At that time, little Shui had subdued the innate water element and planet Shaji was about to open. We hurriedly brought you there to level up, so we let this person go. Mo Lien said in a low voice. At that time, he couldn't care less about Cheong Hao. Jojo's situation was the most important. Only Duan Yu and the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who were standing next to them, can hear Prince Mo's low voice clearly. Cheong Hao had already led dozens of mercenaries to Ba Shu and the others without consulting anyone. Cheong Hao folded his arms and sneered. We also want to participate in the competition. How about it? Are you scared? Ba Shu swatted at Cheong Hao. Chapter 3195. Scared of you? Cheong Hao exuded vast and mighty spiritual energy, and he abruptly blocked with his fist. Bam! Ba Shu's palm collided with Cheong Hao's fist, and he immediately flew back several steps. His feet scraped against the grass, and he managed to stabilize himself with great difficulty so that he wouldn't fall to the ground in a sorry state. However, this exchange made Ba Shu realize that his cultivation was far inferior to the other parties, and his expression instantly turned very unsightly. The little stoic blinked and eagerly rolled up her sleeves. Normally, there weren't many opportunities to fight. What kind of competition was this? It was a legitimate opportunity to beat someone up, so Sir Jojo had to firmly grasp this opportunity. Her red battle suit was finally put to good use. However, Mo Lien held her small hand and tugged at her, exasperated. She said quietly, "Be good and wait a bit longer." This little fellow definitely had a strange quirk. She got excited whenever she saw this competition. This guy's cultivation fluctuations are a bit strange. Mo Lien knitted her brows and said, "Let them go first." Because they were in the same team for the time being, Commandery Princess Xiangchang reluctantly walked up and handed Ba Shu a healing pill for him to consume. This healing pill was a high-rank pill, so it naturally paled in comparison to the little stoic's concoction skills. However, it could temporarily slow down Ba Shu. It would be a lie to say that Ba Shu wasn't shocked. He didn't expect that a mere mercenary group leader's cultivation would be above his. That attack had secretly left an internal injury in his body. If he couldn't recover from it with a healing pill, it would affect his cultivation in the future. The little stoic whispered to her husband, "How did he suddenly become so powerful?" She remembered that that guy's cultivation was merely a level 12 great spiritual cultivator back in north-facing Great Forest, which wasn't far off from Ba Shu's cultivation. Logically speaking, the two of them should be evenly matched, but that attack just now caused Ba Shu to suffer quite a bit of internal injury. Mo Lien curled her lips coldly, and her gaze landed on Qiong Hao. He awakened a strength-type special ability. Mr. Jojo's face turned cold and he looked at Qiong Hao suspiciously. To be able to accept the mission of the Shrine Massacre, there should be a certain connection between them and Tian Yun. Therefore, the reason why Qiong Hao suddenly awakened a strength-type special ability was because of him. His body had been modified by Tian Yun's medicine? Duan Yu furrowed his brows and commented, "His situation is a bit like a demonic cultivator who fused with a portion of a strength-type demonic beast." Mo Lien scrutinized Qiong Hao again before nodding. But I can sense the fluctuations of a special ability inside his body. Espers could sense each other, but some low-level espers might not be able to sense high-level espers. There was no doubt about this. Sir Jojo asked curiously, "Do you mean that the reason why this guy became so strong is that he not only fused with the demonic beast's power but also awakened a special strength-type ability?" The two of them nodded. Jojo was a little excited, and his small body leaped forward. Great, he finally found someone who could take a beating. Mo Lien face-bombed. She inexplicably read this sentence from the little fellow's sparkling eyes. 2 more chapters. Chapter 3196. Qiong Hao. The little girl leaped in front of him and sized him up. "Your opponent is me." A faint trace of anger appeared in Qiong Hao's eyes. Of course, he remembered this brat. In the great north-facing forest, he had suffered a great loss at the hands of this brat. Even now, he could not forget the pathetic state he had been in. But now Qiong Hao sneered. If this brat still thought that he would be trampled under her feet and abused as she wished like before, then she was truly too foolish and too naive. Qiong Hao wrinkled his nose slightly, and the corner of his mouth twitched unconsciously. "Little girl, I wonder if you've heard of this saying. A scholar who has been away for 3 days will return to his former glory." Boom! In the blink of an eye, Miss Chiao's eyes flashed fiercely, and a stream of water spirit fell, exploding at Qiong Hao's feet. At the same time, the startled swan dagger suddenly jumped out of her conscious and made a half-circle in the air. With a buzzing sound, it stabbed straight at Qiong Hao's chest. Qiong Hao was a little flustered. Was this girl crazy? He had not finished speaking? Who fought like this? Couldn't he just let him finish his sentence? What was the hurry? Was there a need to be this anxious? Did she care about these few minutes? She did not want him to finish speaking. Of course, Arbor did not know that Qiong Hao was conflicted about his attitude. Since she had already made her move, she naturally had to give it her all. Of course, she was prepared for battle. Sir Jojo's attitude towards any opponent, no matter how small, was very serious. A large black saber appeared in Qiong Hao's hand, and he blocked the startled swan dagger. But Qiong Hao did not expect that this small dagger would be so powerful. When the back of his saber touched the dagger, a vast and mighty force hit him in the face, forcing him to retreat continuously. Several feet away, Qiong Hao's body swayed slightly. Cough, cough, cough. He choked on his breath and coughed a few times. His small rat-like eyes were now filled with blatant malice. That damned little girl. She actually dared to attack while he was not paying attention. How hateful! This wretched girl must have done it on purpose, catching him off guard and catching him off guard. Qiong Hao put his hand on his chest, which was surging with blood, and stared at Arbor with gloomy eyes. Don't think that you can beat me with a sneak attack. Many times, boom. Qiong Hao's body trembled when he sensed the aura of the wood spirit behind him. He rolled several times on the ground, dodging the wooden vines one after another. He quickly leaped to the side and rolled away. However, even though he reacted quickly, Arbor's wood spirit was even faster. The dozen or so wooden vines only paused for less than a second in the air before sweeping towards him in unison. Chiong Hao's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. In order to avoid the dozens of wooden vines, Chiong Hao could only roll on the ground to dodge. He was on the verge of tears. The way he rolled around on the spot was unsightly. This time, he had lost all his face in front of everyone. Arbor looked at him coldly and didn't say a word. In reality, the little stoic never liked to waste words with others when fighting. If you're fighting, then just fight. Where did all this talk come from? Chiong Hao was completely unaware that the little stoic was so straightforward. In the little stoic's opinion, who would have the leisure to chat with you while fighting? It was simply hilarious. Chapter 3197. Chiong Hao was naturally incomparably gloomy on the inside. He wanted to open his mouth to speak again and again, but he was interrupted by the stoic face every time. Now, he even had a bit of a psychological shadow. He kept feeling that if he didn't bring out his true abilities and properly fight with this damn stoic face, he would definitely be out of luck. Don't be too arrogant. Chiong Hao hastily dodged a vine that the little stoic threw at him. His entire body abruptly emitted a sinister aura, and he yelled furiously, "Damn ah!" The little stoic's attack landed squarely on his chest, and he flew back several steps. He shook his head with disheveled hair, and his eyes were brimming with resentment. Fire bat. Chiong Hao suddenly tore open the clothes on his upper body, revealing his frail chest as well as the strange fiery red demon patterns that covered his chest and abdomen. His shoulder blades bulged slightly, and his face was flushed red. Arbor actually wanted to see what he could transform into, so he simply stopped and calmly waited for him to transform. Before long, Chiong Hao's back seemed to have been cut open by a blade, and two blood-colored bat wings abruptly emerged. Was this the ability of fusing with the demonic fire bat? Arbor glanced coldly at the other party, then lowered his head to glance at the ground entwined with wooden vines, and his lips curled coldly. In the blink of an eye, the wooden vines on the ground all gathered together as if they were alive and swiftly swam toward Chiong Hao's feet. Chiong Hao flapped his two bat wings and proudly flew into the sky. He hovered in midair and hooted, "Damn girl, there's a path to heaven, but you won't take it. Hell, ugh." He suddenly felt a tremendous force pulling at his feet. When he looked down, a dozen wooden vines instantly rose up and rapidly wrapped around his legs in the sky. This irresistible suction force was coming from those wooden vines. Damn it, could it be that these wood spirits were still alive? Chiong Hao looked up furiously, and he involuntarily brandished the large black saber in his hand to hack at the wooden vines at his feet. Bang! His large saber actually bounced back with this hack, and the hand holding the saber's hilt felt slightly numb. His mind went blank, and disbelief flashed through his eyes. How could this be? Please, these are just wooden vines. How can they not be cut down by spirit weapons? While his mind was filled with question marks, the vines on the ground all climbed up and wrapped around Chiong Hao, forming a giant cocoon, sealing him inside without leaving a single gap. At this moment, everyone on the field was watching with an extremely serious expression. The saint was even more shocked. He had seen the little stoic fight several times before, but the little stoic had directly taken the shortcut many times. She would casually summon a powerful battle beast to confront her opponent and insta-kill her opponent in a matter of minutes. Although everyone was afraid of her, they still felt that her cultivation was only average. It was because the beasts around this stoic face were powerful that he could protect her, this weak little chicken. But now, the saint's view had completely changed. How terrifying! This girl's wood spirit seemed to be endlessly released. Even now, it was still being released layer by layer. He saw Chiong Hao, who was wrapped in the giant wooden vine cocoon, slashing with his saber with a terrified expression. His face was somewhat distorted. The space inside the wooden vine cocoon was not small. Chiong Hao could still flap his bat wings while hovering in the air. Chapter 3198. Unfortunately, even if he had wings now, he couldn't fly out of this wooden cage. Cough, cough, cough. Chiong Hao gave up on his plan to hack at the wooden cage. Because this cage made of wooden vines was extremely sturdy, practically comparable to an iron bastion. Although he didn't know why, He was certain that the little stoic had planned to trap him in the cage from the start. Otherwise, she wouldn't have endlessly released the power of the wood spirit and caused the ground to be covered in these vines. At this time, there was dead silence, and no one knew what to say. They had all witnessed Arbor's methods. The most terrifying thing was that she dealt with a mutated demonic cultivator so easily. Everyone looked up at Cheong Hao, who was suspended in midair. The vines on the ground intertwined together and stretched all the way to the sky, building a giant wooden cage in the air. This caused everyone to feel a strange visual shock. No one could control the power of the wood spirit to this extent. Today was their first time seeing someone who could control the power of the wood spirit like this. Cheong Hao was currently locked in that wooden cage and had no way to escape. He could only pant slightly and subconsciously flap the wings on his back. Arbor glanced at him indifferently and lowered her head to look at her small palms. Her power of the wood spirit was naturally endless because of the existence of the sacred wood, the spirit of all living things in the world, and all the wood attributes in the world, could be used by her, providing her with an endless supply of power. As for why this wooden cage was so sturdy, it was naturally because she added 3 solidifying talismans outside the wooden cage. You think you can chop these wooden vines just because you want to? You're simply daydreaming. A blue flame leaped out of Arbor's fingers. She looked up at Cheong Hao in the wooden cage and fired it at him without a second word. The flame wormed its way in through the gaps in the wooden cage and directly burned Cheong Hao's body. Everyone heard hissing roars coming from the wooden cage, and the dozens of burly mercenaries who came with Cheong Hao were already trembling in fright. They didn't expect that their captain, who was so powerful, would be completely unable to retaliate against this little girl. If that was the case, wouldn't they be courting death by coming here? Holy Sun Mayan stood up, coughed lightly, and said, "Facial paralysis, Crown Princess wins." No one had any objections. In fact, many of the people present wanted to back out. Since the Crown Princess was so powerful, what else could they do? What was there to fight? If he went up, he would be courting death. Arbor burned the guy for a while, and all they heard was the guy howling. She frowned and said coldly, "What a load of nonsense. Are you still not going to transform?" She didn't have the time to waste on him. What she wanted to see was this person's true strength. Since he had already fused with the power of the evil beasts and had been transformed by the heavenly fate, it was impossible for him to only have this little strength. A scarlet color flashed across Cheong Hao's eyes. His cheeks were red from the burning of the blue spirit cleansing flame, and his entire body gave off the smell of blood. He suddenly roared in the wooden cage. This roar caused everyone to jump in fright. How could that sound be human? It was clearly the roar of a wild beast. Mo Lien's eyes flickered. Her fingers moved slightly, and a black flame spread out from her fingertips. Chapter 3199. The black fire was ready to go at any time. If his Jojo was in danger, he naturally couldn't just stand by and watch. At the same time, Cheong Hao's body in the wooden cage suddenly underwent a drastic change. Amidst a series of crackling sounds, all the bones in his body were rapidly growing. His face underwent a great change. Everyone looked at him, their eyes couldn't help but become a bit frightened. How is this still a human? This guy is completely like a huge bat. That pair of small eyes flashed with a trace of ominous light. Even his body completely mutated. Everyone was scared out of their wits. Subconsciously, they wanted to leave the battlefield. They felt that what happened next might be worse. Roar! Cheong Hao squatted in the wooden cage and let out an earth-shattering roar. The sound wave rushing out of his mouth was mixed with the sound of wind, causing people's eardrums to slightly hurt. Madame Goen was the first to bear the brunt of this roar. She felt a gust of wind blow in her face, and her hair stood on end. She couldn't help but sway a little, and almost fell to the ground. "Madam!" Huang Yang hurriedly supported her and quickly pulled her to the back of the crowd. At this time, the crowd was already a bit chaotic. No one was a fool. How could they stand at the front and block a knife for someone else? So everyone wanted to squeeze to the back. In the end, it was Holy Sun Mi Yen and a group of temple guards and priests who were pushed to the front. The temple priest's face was somewhat unsightly. Holy Sun Mi Yan's face was somewhat indifferent, but his eyes were slightly cold as he raised his head and fell on Qiong Hao, who was suspended in the wooden cage in the air. He took a deep breath and slightly closed his eyes. What kind of existence is this heavenly fate? Is it a place to create monsters? Why did the Temple Lord join this heavenly fate organization, and why did he stubbornly bring the entire temple into this kind of situation? Arbor coldly looked at the rapidly transforming freak in front of him. At this time, Qiong Hao's eyes had already lost the last trace of human reason. He was like a huge bat with a human head, flapping his wings and fiercely hitting the wooden cage. After the rapid mutation, his body's toughness had greatly increased. After hitting it 3 times in a row, the wooden cage was slightly deformed. On the 5th collision, his deformed head popped out of the cage and got stuck between the wooden vines. He glared at Xiao Mu in front of him with a ferocious glint, and he opened his mouth to spit out a stream of air directly at Xiao Mu's head. Suddenly, Xiao Mu jumped up and twisted her waist in the air. With a beautiful spin, she landed lightly on a rattan tree and steadied herself. At the same time, the air current landed beneath her feet and exploded the wooden vines beneath her feet. Arbor flew up again and landed lightly on another vine. She looked coldly at Qiong Hao in front of her. She flipped her fingers and a flying talisman quickly appeared in her palm. "So disgusting, there's no need for it to exist," Arbor finally said coldly. Then he quickly rose into the air and flew in front of Qiong Hao. Through the wooden cage, he quickly shot 3 ice spikes at Qiong Hao's mutated giant head. Chi chi chi. The ice spikes all fell on Qiong Hao's head, but they were all deflected by him. He was enraged again and roared at Arbor. Chapter 3200. Everyone stared at this scene in shock, wondering if Qiong Hao had gained the ability to become an impregnable fortress after mutating. Arbor's gaze focused, and the startled swan dagger drilled out from behind her again. A blinding white light suddenly exploded from the dagger, and it instantly pierced toward Qiong Hao's eye like a flash of lightning. This dagger pierced through Qiong Hao's left eye and directly penetrated his forehead. Ah! Qiong Hao let out an inhuman roar. His single eye carried a trace of blood-red light as he glowered viciously at Arbor in front of him. At the same time, his entire body swelled up again like a ball. "Mommy! He's going to self-detonate." This Qiong Hao was probably so angry that he lost his mind and wanted to perish together with the little crown princess. But don't freaking self-detonate here. They were in the same mystic realm. Not only would self-detonation cause great harm to the mystic realm, but it would also implicate innocent bystanders like them. Chen Baojia and the others were livid, deeply enraged by the little stoic. This stoic disregarded the consequences and fought with Qiong Hao, provoking this lunatic. If it weren't for her belligerence, this wouldn't have happened. Roar! Qiong Hao abruptly broke free from the wooden cage and swooped down from the sky, shooting toward Arbor like a giant cannonball. Layers of cold air instantly floated between Arbor's hands. At the same time that Qiong Hao swooped down, the outer layer of her body was wrapped in a layer of sharp ice spikes. This little fellow seemed to have turned into a hedgehog in an instant, spreading out her sharp horns. Qiong Hao swooped down with his palm and just happened to press down on the sharp ice spikes defense that she suddenly erected. Thus, this fellow was like a punctured balloon, leaking air from her palm and spreading to her entire body. An incomplete mutated monster's body puffed out white smoke, completely unable to stop the rapid dissipation of its power. Since its power was already completely dissipating, it naturally couldn't gather and solidify it again to continue self-detonating. If you can become a genius just by taking medicine, then what's the use of having geniuses in this world? Arbor let out a furious roar and kicked Qiong Hao in the chest, sending him flying backward. Using one's own strength to fight against others, that is the ultimate strength. Arbor suddenly dashed over. Her jade-like hand covered with the Vajra talisman was like a cold killing weapon, ruthlessly hammering Qiong Hao's chin. Puff! Qiong Hao's deformed head tilted backward as a stream of blood flowed out of its mouth. "It's my own power." Bang! This punch landed heavily on Qiong Hao's other eye. At this moment, Qiong Hao's entire body had mutated, and he could not feel any pain at all. However, he had already lost one of his eyes. Now that Arbor had punched his other eye, he subconsciously closed his eyes and saw nothing but darkness. I can pursue the great Tao of the peak of martial arts, but not to become a monster and pursue it. Arbor kicked Xionghao's lower body and stepped him under her feet. She held the startled swan dagger and aimed it at Xionghao's head. She said coldly, "Those who have no bottom line will eventually suffer the consequences of their own actions." "You're too ugly," Arbor said coldly. "Go to hell." Teeth. A trace of indignation spread across Xionghao's twisted face. He felt thick blood seeping out of his neck. Chapter 3201. He truly didn't expect that even after transforming into such a powerful person, he still couldn't escape being brutally killed by the little stoic. He still wasn't strong enough. Xionghao's contorted face contorted. Although blood kept bubbling from his neck, he still persisted and stammered, You don't get carried away. Long live the heavenly fortune. Those who obey the heavens prosper, those who defy the heavens. Xiao Mu took out a normal spiritual weapon hammer from her inner world and smashed this fellow's head to pieces with a single blow. Everyone. Humph, do you think you can represent heavenly law? If heavenly law is unfair, we mortals can also resist, let alone a mere heavenly fortune. Arbor snorted and then turned his head. A sharp glint flashed in his eyes as he asked sternly, "Who else wants to challenge me? Come." Absolute silence. A deathly silence. No one, including Chen Baojia, who was accustomed to courting death, dared to utter another word. Arbor glanced at them coldly before turning to look at the center of the mystic realm, at the ball of snow-white light suspended high in the sky. No matter which direction one looked at it from, the object wrapped in this ball of snow-white light couldn't be seen clearly. However, Arbor was well aware that this was the Sun-Moon twin wheels. As long as this seal was severed, the Sun-Moon twin wheels would regain its freedom. At that time, it would be free no matter where it went. According to Mo's words, the Sun-Moon twin wheels were originally her natal weapon and would only follow her in her lifetime. However, Mo had already died and vanished, completely concealed in the vast sky. Since the Sun-Moon twin wheels were a sacred weapon born of heaven and earth, they naturally had an artifact spirit. How would they choose? Arbor reached out his small hand and stroked the halo from a distance. He could actually sense the anxiety and unease within it. Since they were Mo's natal weapon, the Sun-Moon twin wheels could naturally sense Mo's death. Anxiety was normal. Arbor clenched his hand into a fist and threw 2 punches at the light sealing the Sun-Moon twin wheels. In an instant, the entire ball of light burst open, and a buzzing sound jumped out from within. Everyone stared at the scene in front of them with their mouths agape. They almost couldn't believe it. Everyone, including Holy Sun Mi Yen, stood there dumbstruck, scanning the little stoic from head to toe as if they were looking at a ghost. They had already found this place a long time ago, and it wasn't as if no one had tried to cut off that layer of light and snatch the sun and moon wheels before anyone else. However, not a single person was able to succeed. Everyone was blocked by this layer of sealing light, unable to break this ancient seal. And at that time, Holy Sun Mi Yen had already told them that this seal had been placed a very long time ago. Perhaps the powerful figure who had placed this seal should be the previous owner of this secret realm, who was at least 1,000 years old. It was normal that they couldn't break the seal. Holy Sun Mi Yen also proposed to gather everyone's strength to break the seal. But after breaking the seal, this pair of Sun-Moon twin wheels could only have one owner. That was why everyone thought of a plan. They would first compete to determine who was the owner of the Sun-Moon twin wheels, and then gather everyone's strength to break the seal. However, at this time, everything had overturned their understanding. They didn't expect the little stoic to break this seal without expending any effort at all. Chapter 3202. How could everyone endure this? Holy Sun Mi Yen, in particular, still had a dumbfounded expression on his face, and he repeatedly glanced at the little stoic several times. Previously, he was the one who told everyone that this sealed light source was placed by an almighty person, and they simply couldn't break it with their individual strength. His words were still ringing in their ears, but now, they were slapped in the face. This sour feeling, the little stoic couldn't have been possessed by a demon, right? Everyone thought this at the same time. At this time, the sun-moon twin wheels had already flown out, so fast that they couldn't see them clearly. The little stoic saw this pair of weapons fly around her in a circle, emitting a buzzing sound. The little fellow gave a rare smile to the pair of weapons and nodded slightly. Subsequently, everyone saw the sun-moon twin wheels glide across the sky with a swish like shooting stars chasing after the moon, instantly disappearing from the mystic realm. Where are the twin wheels? Chen Baojia couldn't resist shrieking. She was simply about to go mad from anger. How many trials and tribulations had they gone through to reach this place? Not only were they constantly hunted down by mercenary groups, but they were also attacked by zombies time and time again. Not only did they not reap any benefits, but they were also tricked into such a wretched state. She truly didn't know what the objective of this trip was. Not only was Chen Baojia so livid, but even Gui Xuan, Xiangchang royal princess, and the others were so angry that their hearts, livers, spleens, and lungs ached. They didn't expect that the sun-moon twin wheels would fly far away with a whoosh before they could even clearly see what they looked like. Several mercenaries rapidly chased after the sun-moon twin wheels. Halfway through the chase, his body seemed to have been blown apart by something. His whole body fell to the ground with a loud bang. Everyone's body stiffened. They had originally wanted to chase after the sun-moon twin wheels, but at this time, they all swallowed their saliva and stopped with a look of fear on their faces. Arbor and the others clearly saw that the people chasing after them were shot by the white light emitted by the sun-moon twin wheels. This white light was naturally the divine weapon's coercion. Normal people couldn't even withstand a single finger of the sun-moon twin wheels. Chasing after them was simply a dead end. Xiao Mu swept them a cold glance before turning around to walk to her husband's side and tugging at his sleeve. Mo Lien lowered his head and touched her little face with a smile. "Okay, your husband will protect you. Hurry up and refine it." As she said this, her fingers rapidly moved as she pulled Duan Yu to lay down several layers of defensive boundaries around Arbor. Under everyone's gaze, Arbor sat down cross-legged and slowly closed his eyes. He focused his mind and calmed his qi, allowing his heart to move freely. A wisp of white light spiraled around her body. Immediately after, everyone discovered that all the spiritual energy in the mystic realm was madly surging towards the little stoic. Everyone cursed in their hearts and hastily dashed over, wanting to snatch the spiritual aura around the little stoic. Such dense spiritual energy was almost visible to the naked eye. If they could snatch a few points from under the stoic face's hands, then they could be considered to have benefited greatly. They all had the same thought. So a large group of people ran to Arbor's side and sat down cross-legged without a care, planning to snatch some spiritual energy from Arbor to absorb. However, how could they know that Arbor wasn't simply absorbing the spiritual energy in the mystic realm? She was refining the entire sun-moon mystic realm. Refining. She had already refined the spirit domain more than once. So this time, it could be said that she did it with extreme ease. Chapter 3203. Everyone scrambled to absorb the spiritual energy around Arbor, but it wasn't long before they discovered a frightening fact. They simply couldn't snatch even a sliver of spiritual energy. What was going on? Chen Baojia and the others opened their eyes in alarm and astonishment, wanting to clearly see Arbor's figure. However, the little stoic was currently completely enveloped by streams of dense spiritual energy that resembled water dragons sucking in water. She was also protected by several defensive boundaries, so it was simply very difficult to clearly see this stoic face's situation. Gui Xuan also tried his best to clearly see the little stoic's current situation, but unfortunately, it was very difficult. The little crown princess didn't know what other people were thinking. Right now, she was trying her best to absorb the spiritual energy that was endlessly pouring in from all directions, so how could she have the leisure to pay attention to other people? When she looked inside herself, she saw that all the spiritual energy was pouring into her Dantian star domain. At this moment, the sapling's leaves were very dense, and it had already gradually transformed from that pitifully bare tree into a flourishing one. Arbor was very happy to see this. She thought of the sapling that had accompanied her for so many years in the void, and then thought of its pitiful appearance as a half-withered log. Looking at its appearance now, she couldn't help but be overjoyed. It's already continuously developing in a better and better direction, Arbor thought to herself. It'll get better in the future. This sun-moon mystery realm was bigger than Paradise Planet. It could even be said that it was almost twice as big as Paradise Planet. In all these days, Arbor actually hadn't traveled to every corner of the sun-moon mystery realm. At this moment, it would take at least 4 hours to completely refine it. As large amounts of spiritual energy poured into her star domain Dantian, the sapling's body swayed slightly as it bathed in the light of spiritual energy. The entire sun-moon mystery realm was quietly crumbling bit by bit amidst the tremors. At first, Gu Yishuan and the others naturally didn't know the situation. But gradually, as the ground started to crack, everything inside the mystery realm seemed to instantly become blurry. Everyone clearly realized that the situation was developing in a strange direction. The mystic realm was about to collapse. Everyone was alarmed. Led by Gu Yishuan, everyone covered themselves with a layer of defensive cover. They communicated with each other in panic. What's going on? Is the mystic realm about to collapse? There are still at least 20 days before we leave, right? Why is this mystic realm collapsing all of a sudden? No one could link the collapse of this mystic realm to Xiaomu at all. As far as they were concerned, Arbor was indeed powerful, but refining the entire arcane realm? What kind of joke was this? This joke was not funny at all. Arbor didn't know what everyone was thinking, and she didn't care what they thought of her. While she was silently absorbing and refining the energy, she suddenly opened her eyes. In the meantime, the entire secret realm collapsed in an instant. Everyone was thrown into chaos, screaming as they were sent flying. Xiaomu stretched out her hand and put away the refined round bead into her palm without attracting anyone's attention. At this moment, there was still a swirling spiritual energy floating around her body. Outside her body, there were 3 layers of defensive barriers. No one could see her movements clearly. Sun-moon mystery realm, refining, success. Xiaomu's lips curled into a faint smile playfully. Chapter 3204. After the spiritual energy was injected into her star domain, she could feel the vast star domain tremble slightly. A sun and moon core instantly entered her star domain and hung next to Paradise Planet. It was round and smooth, emitting a faint lustrous white light. Arbor felt his body lighten at this moment, and he was pulled into Emolien's embrace. They were already prepared, so after being ejected from the mystic realm, they very leisurely landed on the ground. On the other hand, the others simply didn't know that the mystic realm would instantly collapse, so they still had dumbfounded expressions on their faces. Especially Holy Sun Mi Yen, his expression was practically the highlight. That handsome face had a vacant expression, and his eyes even subconsciously blinked. When Arbor looked at him from afar, he suddenly felt like he was an idiot. Holy Sun Mi Yen suddenly turned his head and looked meaningfully at Arbor. He kept feeling that today's matter was greatly related to this stoic face. This little stoic was very eccentric. There was nothing she wouldn't do. Now that he thought about it again, the reason why the mystic realm collapsed was probably because the little stoic had absorbed all the spiritual energy. Although he thought of this, Holy Sun Mi Yen still didn't say anything and only said dryly to everyone, "Since the mystic realm has collapsed, then everyone cough, rest for a night and then set off back." Everyone's dumbfounded state instantly turned into uncontrollable fury. What kind of freaking joke was this? They had traveled a long way to reach this place. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they had practically experienced 3 calamities and 9 tribulations along the way, and they only managed to reach this sun and moon mystic realm after walking a fine line between life and death. In the end, they didn't reap a single cent of benefits. Heavens, since when was this world so unfair and filled with eerie malice toward the entire human world? Sir Jojo expressionlessly glanced at the wailing and crying crowd, then used his divine sense to carefully examine the items on the sun, moon, and star domain. Mo's small courtyard was filled with exotic flowers and rare herbs, so there was no need to mention this point. Besides, there were 5 treasure rooms built next to the small courtyard. These were where all of Mo's assets were located. Looking at the items, it should be quite sumptuous. Arbor thought about it and decided to wait until they left this place before taking out some good stuff for his companions. Otherwise, if he took it out now, it would seem like he was showing off in front of these miserable people. What a pity. She worked for nothing. Xiao Mu shook her head sympathetically before becoming expressionless again. Prince Mo looked at the little girl's rich expression and almost burst out laughing in his heart. The little guy's inner thoughts were full of drama. Naughty. He stroked her little head and said softly, Jojo, let's go back to the capital. Xiao Mu looked up at him, and her heart involuntarily softened when she saw the gentle light overflowing from his eyes. She obediently nodded her small head. She actually wanted to play for a while before going back. However, her husband wanted to return to the capital. He was probably thinking about the wedding ceremony. She naturally had to cooperate with him. Duan Yu glanced at them and remarked with a faint smile, We've been out for quite some time. I also have to make a trip back first. We'll meet again at the academy. He knew that once they came out, it meant that they had to part ways. Although it made him extremely helpless, but they would eventually meet again, right? Arbor nodded and was about to say a few more words to Duan Yu when she suddenly heard Holy Sun Mi Yen roar, Everyone, lie down. Everyone almost reflexively crouched down. Chapter 3205. At the same time, there was a loud boom, and the tremors instantly shook the entire mountaintop. More than a dozen spirit stone cannons fired at them at the same time. That student from the Hong Academy who couldn't react in time was instantly blasted into pieces and vanished into thin air. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear. The temple's people were crafty as expected, actually lying in wait for them in this rear mountain. Once they left the secret realm and appeared here, they would immediately fall into the range of the spirit stone cannons. Of course, there was a huge difference between humans and cannons. No one wanted to be the bird that stuck out its neck and enjoy the might of the spirit stone cannons with its flesh and blood. Holy Sun Mi Yan's expression was extremely unsightly. He didn't expect that the temple would shed all pretense of cordiality like this and want to annihilate all of them here. That middle-aged priest, Tai Shan, walked out from the crowd and said with a faint smile, Holy Sun, you don't need to hide. I already saw you. Please come out. Holy Sun Mi Yan's expression became extremely unsightly. He then turned around and said to Arbor, Mo Lien, and the others behind him, I'll go out and deal with them in a moment. You guys escape into the mountain as soon as possible. Once they entered the dense forest, the spirit stone cannon's accuracy would naturally be much worse. Although everyone's cultivation was outstanding, they didn't want to bear the might of more than a dozen spirit stone cannons. When they came out in the midst of the chaos, Arbor had already put away the little monk and the little monkey into his storage talisman without batting an eyelid. There were too many people and it was very dangerous, so it naturally wasn't suitable for him to bring the 2 little ones out to play. Upon hearing Mi Yan's words, Arbor involuntarily creased his brows and irritably retorted, You're not a saint. You don't need to sacrifice yourself to save everyone. Holy Sun Mi Yan opened his mouth and then said exasperatedly, Do you think I'm stupid? I naturally have the confidence to escape from these people. Don't show off. Arbor rolled his eyes irritably. They've set up crossbows on the periphery of this rear mountain. We can activate the defensive barrier to resist for a while, but with spirit stone cannons, and spirit stone cannons. However, with the addition of the spirit stone cannons and crossbows, only a fool would continue to stay here. Of course, it would be better to think of a way to defeat them one by one after entering the dense forest. Holy Sun Mayan was rendered a bit speechless by the little stoic's words. However, at this moment, Chen Baojia suddenly stood up from the crowd. Tai Shan narrowed his eyes and waved his hand. All the cannons were aimed at Chen Baojia. The people squatting near Chen Baojia couldn't help but secretly complain. This foolish woman, she didn't even know where to aim the cannon accurately. Now that she suddenly stood up, she exposed their position to everyone. Wasn't this the same as shooting the bird that stood out? Aren't you from the temple coming for Arbor? Although Chen Baojia was very scared, she gritted her teeth and said in a trembling voice, "We agree to give Arbor to you, but you have to promise not to hurt anyone else here." Holy Sun Mi Yen turned his head in disbelief and stared at Chen Baojia as if he was looking at a weirdo. Was this woman crazy? Who agreed to hand over the little stoic? Could she represent everyone here? What a joke! Chen Baojia hastily turned her head and said to everyone, "Can't you see? The temple wanted to capture Arbor both times. This matter has nothing to do with us at all. We were merely caught in the crossfire." Chapter 3206. Everyone's expression became somewhat mysterious and abnormal. Not all of them were fools. Chen Baojia could see the problem. Did she think others couldn't? When seeing this spirit stone cannon, who still didn't understand the problem? This group of people from the Divine Temple and the group of people who fired at them in the Red River Canyon were definitely in cahoots. At that time in the Red River Canyon, didn't they want to catch the little crown princess? They spent so much effort, perhaps just to catch the little crown princess? But even if they knew that they might be caught in the crossfire, so what? If you want to push the little crown princess out to suffer, you have to see whether her husband is willing or not. "Miss Qin." Holy Sun Mi Yen shouted. This Chen Baojia was really sick. At this time, instead of thinking about how to unite and escape, she was still fighting among herself. This kind of behavior was simply unbearable. Chen Baojia said in a shrill voice, "Does the Divine Temple want to catch her? Why do they want to implicate us?" Bang! Suddenly, a spirit stone cannon bombarded Chen Baojia's position. Holy Sun Mi Yen shouted, "Quickly get out of the way." After a loud bang, Chen Baojia exerted all her strength and screamed as she rolled and dodged. Although she dodged quickly, she was still affected by the fragments of the spirit stone cannon. Her left arm was seriously injured, and blood flowed out at once. At the same time, a student of the Flying Sword Academy lying beside Chen Baojia was very unlucky and became a dead soul under the cannon. He didn't even have time to make a sound before he died. Chen Baojia covered her mouth with her hand in horror, not daring to make another sound. What an idiot! Jing Linyao frowned and sneered in the depths of her heart. Couldn't she see that the Divine Temple's purpose was to kill all of them? How could they let anyone live? This Chen Baojia was really stupid. Did she think that as long as she surrendered to the Divine Temple at this moment, she could get a chance to live? Jing Linyao curled her lips sarcastically, and her brain quickly worked on a plan to escape. These dozens of spirit stone cannons were aimed at them. No matter who moved first, they would end up like Chen Baojia and become the target of the cannon fire. "Don't act rashly," Mo Lien whispered into her ear. He knew that Jojo had already made up his mind about the worst-case scenario, which was to take them all into his spirit realm at the risk of its leaking aura. However, if Jojo could not leave the back of the mountain, she would still appear in the same place when she reappeared. At that time, with the ability of the Sun Moon Hall Master, he would definitely be able to see through her. If the Heavenly Fate organization found out that they were carrying a great secret like the spirit realm, there would be a lot of trouble waiting for them. He could not let Jojo take the risk. At this moment, they were all hiding behind the vegetation. If they made any strange movements, it was hard to guarantee that they wouldn't become targets. Indeed, he was in a dilemma. Arbor clenched his small fist. "If there is no other way, we can only sacrifice those little guys on planet Shaji." If it was possible, of course she wanted to solve the problem in front of her. However, if it was impossible, she would not deliberately force it. She couldn't take the risk with the lives of her companions. "Wait first." Mo Lien understood her meaning and turned to smile at her. "I guess there will be a turn for the better." Chapter 3207. What turning point? Arbor was taken aback. They were already being attacked with cannons, so what great turning point could there be? She used her divine conscious to flip through the divine weapons in her conscious, looking at them one by one. She was somewhat reluctant to part with them. These little fellows had fought alongside her all the way here. Now that she had to choose one to explode and destroy these enemies, she was naturally extremely reluctant. Forget it, Unless it was absolutely necessary. Emolienne suddenly reached out and lightly tugged at her small hand. Look. When Arbor looked up, she saw that the temple's team seemed to have fallen into disarray. After hearing two loud booms, it was as if the spirit stone cannons had suddenly exploded inside their team. This instantly caused the temple's people to become flustered. Emolienne took advantage of this opportunity to scoop up Sir Jojo's small body and dashed into the depths of the mountain forest. Duan Yu and the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal had already followed over. At the same time, apart from the Seikong Planet Battle Team and Sidu Yi's group, Holy Sun Mi Yan's group and Jing Linyao's reaction was the fastest. Bang bang bang. Another 3 loud booms landed among the temple's team. An extremely swift figure instantly slid across the mountain and swiftly arrived beside Arbor and the others. Hurry and leave, Jojo. Mu Xingqian's clothes were stained with a lot of dust, but his eyes were very bright. Eldest brother? Arbor quickly called out, was that you just now? Hurry, leave. We'll talk later. Mu Xingqian quickly tugged at her. Seeing that Emolienne was so petty as she hugged his younger sister to her side, he didn't have time to say anything else in his exhaustion from running for his life. Earlier, he snuck into the temple's team alone and took advantage of their unpreparedness to throw the temple's team into disarray, destroying several of their spirit stone cannons. At the same time, he also caused several spirit stone cannons to explode among the temple's team, causing this group of people to be flustered. But that was only a temporary effect. At this moment, hundreds and thousands of disciples rapidly surged out of the temple and charged toward them. If he didn't run now, when would he? As the saying goes, a wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. If they were surrounded by tens of thousands of people from the Divine Hall, once they used the tactic of taking turns, they would be exhausted to death. Everyone ran into the dense forest. The plan now was to leave this outer area and enter the forest. Then, the heavy and sturdy spirit stone cannon would be useless. This dense forest at the back of the mountain was at least 10 million miles long. At that time, with so many of them scattered, even if the temple sent out tens of thousands of people to search, there was no way to find them one by one in this dense forest. Jojo thought the same. As long as she could disappear from these people's sight, she would have a way to escape with Emolienne and the others. Perhaps, before he left, he might even be able to give the Hall of Gods a huge gift. After all, the other party had already taken care of them and plotted to take their lives time and time again. If they didn't return the favor, it would be a little unreasonable. Chen Baojia hurriedly followed the crowd's footsteps, but before she could run 2 steps, she was slapped in the face by a female student beside her. You're such a harmful slut, how dare you run with us? Get lost. Ah! Chen Baojia bumped into a tree and was shocked to hear a gust of wind behind her. She hurriedly dodged behind the tree, and a spirit stone cannon blew up the tree behind her. Chapter 3208. Ah! Chen Baojia screamed in shock as the female student slapped me in the face again. Bitch, you still have the face to scream. If it weren't for this woman, her senior brother wouldn't have died. This woman didn't want to live, yet she still implicated others. If it wasn't for the fact that the timing wasn't right, she would have drawn her sword and slashed her 3 times. Hong Yao, hurry up and leave. Don't get involved with her. A male student ran out from the side and hurriedly dragged her away. The spirit stone cannon fell again. This time, it blew up one of Queen Fu Sha's subordinates. Queen Fu Sha shouted and turned her head to look. Then, she quickly disappeared into the forest under the protection of the remaining 6 strong men. Chen Baojia followed them in a panic. Her arm was injured, and she was also slapped twice by the female student from Flying Sword Academy. She was seeing stars and her forehead was bleeding. Right now, she looked extremely battered and exhausted. The group of people quickly entered the dense forest. Then, they disappeared under the cover of the tall trees. At this time, Arbor only cared about his own people. Who would have the patience to care about other people's lives? The group of people ran for about half an hour. Only when they heard the sound of the cannons subsiding did they stop running. Arbor turned around and let everyone see if anyone was injured. He counted the number of people and found that everyone was present. At the same time, Holy Sun Mi Yen, the 2 priests, and 7 or 8 guards also came over. "Jojo, are you hurt?" Mu Xingchen hurriedly asked. "I'm by Jojo's side. How could I let him get hurt?" Mo Lien muttered in a low voice. Mu Xingchen glanced at him and then nodded. It had to be said that Jojo's husband was much more reliable than him, Mu Xingchen thought emotionally. Arbor glanced at Mu Xingchen. "Big brother, why did you suddenly appear? Where's that person?" Before, he had seen Mu Xingchen supporting Mu Rochuan all the way. Now that Mu Rochuan had suddenly disappeared and only Mu Xingchen was left, it was a bit strange. Mu Xingchen couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Rochuan threw a tantrum at me and ran away. At that time, I was in the midst of a space-time swap. I wasn't paying attention and she disappeared without a trace." It would be a lie to say that he was not worried. However, with Rochuan's temper, Mu Xingchen could not help but close his eyes. It was too vexing. Arbor asked no more questions. Mu Rochuan was merely a stranger to her, so her life and death were not within Xiao Mu's scope of consideration. Hearing this, Qi Xianxian could not help but snort and turn her head away. Panting sounds could be heard from afar as the underworld region's Prince Ming Bao and the Eternal Peace Duke's Crown Prince Mo Lu hurriedly ran over. When he saw them, he quickly stopped and gasped, "Oh, it's so good to see you all. Quick, let's go. Don't go down like a mushroom here. They are coming." Abyss Leopard panted and waved his hand. Everyone's expression turned cold. Just as they were about to turn around and leave, they heard the sound of hurried footsteps coming from the back of the path. Chen Baojia's hair was disheveled and her forehead was stained with blood. She immediately stumbled out of the path. She raised her head and happened to see Mo Lien. Her eyes instantly reddened as she cried, "Your Highness!" Mo Lien's gaze turned severe. Seeing his fingers twitch, Xiao Mu hastily grabbed his hand. Jojo's Lien could not dirty his hands for this kind of person. Chapter 3209. Chen Baojia ran over in tears and wailed, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, help me, Your Highness the Crown Prince, I—" She somersaulted and fell to the ground. She touched her forehead and felt the sticky blood beads dripping down. She actually scared herself. Duan Yu frowned imperceptibly and was about to slap this woman away to avoid listening to her prattle. Sensing his actions, Xiao Mu quickly stopped him. "Don't pay attention to her. If she wanted to beat this woman, she could do it herself. She couldn't implicate their reputations." Liang Qingqing couldn't resist chuckling. "What? A level 9 spiritual cultivator can't even walk properly?" Chen Baojia angrily gritted her teeth and stood up with an unsightly expression. She trembled as she stood on the side and kept sneaking furtive glances at the expressionless Arbor. She gritted her teeth and still said, Miss Chiao." Mo Lien shot her a sharp look. "I think you want to die." Arbor quickly smoothed the hair of Lien, who was about to explode, and turned to glance at Chen Baojia dryly. "I advise you to leave quickly." "What right do you have to tell me to leave quickly?" Chen Baojia's fury surged. If it weren't for this woman, how could the Crown Prince treat her so coldly and heartlessly? How could he not even look at her? "Since Chen Chaoji doesn't know how to teach his daughter, we will teach her in his place." Mo Lien couldn't help but get angry. He raised his hand and was about to kill Chen Baojia on the spot. Xiao hurriedly grabbed his arm and stopped him. Zhongli Jiwei had already died earlier. If Chen Chaoji's daughter also died here, who knew what kind of monstrous waves would be stirred up in court? Moreover, that Zhongli Jiwei could be said to have been killed by the space because of the mystic realm. If the Crown Prince personally killed this Chen Baojia, it would definitely attract a lot of criticism. Although Jojo's Lotus had always been willful and reckless and was never afraid of these criticisms, Jojo didn't like it. He didn't like these people always talking about Jojo's Lotus. Duan Yu's eyes flashed with impatience. So long-winded. In this prince's opinion, it's better to kill him as soon as possible. After saying that, a long sword landed in his hand. Chen Baojia immediately panicked. She stepped back and screamed, "You can't kill me. My father is the current left Prime Minister Chen Chaoji. My grandaunt is Empress Dowager Chen, who is also the Crown Prince's grandmother. Chen Baojia wasn't truly a fool. When she saw Duan Yu's murderous intent, she knew he really wanted to kill her. She hastily scrambled towards Holy Sun Mayan while shouting, "Holy Sun, save me! Lord Holy Sun, save me!" Holy Sun Mi Yen felt like fucking a dog. This Chen Baojia didn't use her brain and just had to provoke that little stoic who wasn't to be trifled with. Now that the matter had escalated and couldn't be resolved, she dragged him down with her. Seeing that Holy Sun Mi Yan's expression was very unsightly, Chen Baojia shrunk behind him while trembling. She glanced at Duan Yu with terror in her eyes. Her hands tightly clutched Mi Yan's outer robe, treating him as her last life-saving straw. Arbor couldn't help but feel a headache, and he quickly went up to drag Duan Yu over. "I said to ignore her. What's the point of killing this kind of person? You'll only dirty your hands. Let's go." If this Chen Baojia had any brains, she wouldn't have followed them here. Chapter 32:10. However, it was evident that this Chen Baojia was extremely brainless. Not only did she follow them, but she also hid behind Mayan the entire time and watched them cautiously and vigilantly. Since she was vigilant, then she shouldn't have followed them. She even insisted on following their group. She was truly very annoying. Mayan also felt that this woman was incredibly annoying and flung her hand away several times. She said coldly, "Miss Chen, please watch your manners." Chen Baojia couldn't help but feel exasperated. Although Sir Holy Sun was also quite handsome, the one she liked in her heart was His Highness the Crown Prince from start to finish. Otherwise, she wouldn't have listened to Madame Goen's arrangements and willingly stayed in the Crown Prince's Eastern Palace to wait for his return. However, she didn't expect His Highness the Crown Prince to be so heartless and drive her out of the Eastern Palace before she even returned to the Divine Province. The gloominess in her heart had been accumulating until she saw the little stoic before completely erupting. She used Eunuch Li Jr. to test this little crown princess, but the result was that she returned in low spirits. After several confrontations, she and Zhongli Jiwei suffered countless hidden losses at this stoic's hands. Even this time, even Zhongli Jiwei died at the hands of the little crown princess. She knew that she should give up and at least think of a way to fight for that position after leaving this place. But every time she saw His Highness the Crown Prince treat this stoic well, she couldn't tolerate it anymore. She really wanted to explode all the resentment in her heart. "I'm somewhat familiar with this rear mountain." Holy Sun Mayan walked to the little crown princess side and said gravely, "There are 4 entrances and exits in this mountain forest. The temple will definitely heavily seal off these 4 places. I can take you to leave through a secret passage. However, it's a bit far to go around that place. It's very sparsely populated, so the path isn't too easy to walk." "It's fine. Then lead the way." Arbor nodded faintly. "That's our temple's sacred ground." Holy Sun Mayan was silent for a moment before saying with a sigh, "Unless it's absolutely necessary, I really don't want to take you on this trip." After all, no matter what, he was still a member of the temple. He didn't want to bring a group of outsiders to trample on the temple's sacred ground. Arbor could sense his feelings at the moment, so he looked at him and said, "Actually, we can take another exit." Now that the enemy was out in the open and he was in the dark, he could just hide for a while and think of a way to break through. Holy Sun Mi Yen shook his head. Going to the Holy Land is the simplest and most direct way. He knew how much the Temple Master valued this place. Generations of ancestors of the Divine Hall were enshrined in the sacred ground of the Divine Hall. It was impossible for the Temple Master to bring a group of guards to this place to encircle and annihilate them. Holy Sun Mi Yen took a deep breath. "Let's go." Everyone let Holy Sun Mi Yen lead the way, and the group quickly followed. Chen Baojia didn't leave either. She stayed at the back of the group and followed them like a little wife. Seeing that everyone was walking so fast, completely ignoring her injuries and the fact that her body couldn't take it, she couldn't help but feel angry. Holy Sun Mi Yen led them around a mountain forest until they found a small path in the depths of the forest. Along the way, thorns were everywhere. Leading the way, Holy Sun Mi Yen had to let several priests and temple guards constantly cut down the thorns on both sides with swords and sabers. Chen Baojia suddenly screamed in panic, her legs trembling. Chapter 32:11. A venomous snake suddenly slithered out of the grass nest and coldly stared at her like this with its triangular eyes. Liang Qingqing couldn't help but curl her lips mockingly. "I say, you're a level 9 spiritual cultivator. Can you not act like such a noob?" Whenever she encountered something, she would start chirping like a normal person. Liang Qingqing only felt that this woman was very funny. Chen Baojia was truly like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. It was as if she was completely scared out of her wits by those cannons earlier and was cowering in fear and terror at everything she saw. Chen Baojia originally wanted to retort when she heard Liang Qingqing's mockery, but when she saw the group of people shooting cold gazes at her, she suddenly deflated like a deflated ball and couldn't speak. She was simply not liked by this group. But what could she do? With her strength alone, how could she get out of the back gate of the Sun Moon Temple? Of course she had to go with them. Did they think she liked seeing Arbor women's expressions and being fed dog food along the way? She didn't want to stay with this damn Arbor for even a minute, but she had no other choice. "Let's go!" Holy Sun Mi Yen waved his hand and led everyone into the depths of the small path. This area was filled with mountains and forests. To be honest, if it weren't for the Holy Sun leading the way, they might not be able to find such a hidden path even after searching for 10 days to half a month. There was only this one path leading to the temple's sacred land, so Holy Sun Mi Yen was a bit apprehensive. If the temple master of the temple really brought people to the sacred land relentlessly, he gritted his teeth. Suddenly, he saw the little stoic turn her head and glance at him. The Holy Sun's expression stiffened slightly, and he retorted out of habit, "What are you looking at?" The little stoic said expressionlessly, "Why did you give up on pursuing the sun-moon twin wheels in the mystic realm?" Holy Sun Mi Yen stared blankly for a moment before sighing and saying, "The temple has already become like that, so there's no point in me pursuing this supreme holy weapon." As he spoke, he had a disheartened look on his face. It was completely different from his arrogant look from before. The little stoic swept him an indifferent glance. "If the temple master of the temple chases after us with people in a while, don't worry, I will find a way to get you out of here." Upon hearing this, the little stoic inexplicably felt a bit uneasy. She cast him a glance and asked, "What do you mean?" "Ugh." Chen Baojia's exclamation interrupted the conversation between the two. Her finger was trembling as she pointed at the slope diagonally opposite. Everyone glanced over and saw a large number of temple guards rushing towards them. Chen Baojia shouted hysterically, He betrayed us. He betrayed us." The direction she was pointing at was naturally Holy Sun Mi Yen. The saint glanced at her indifferently and couldn't be bothered with what this moron had to say. He retracted his gaze and said to everyone, "Follow me." As soon as Holy Sun Mi Yen moved, everyone followed him and moved quickly. Exerting strength in their legs, they all ran towards the end of the small path. There is a mountain wall in front of him. Holy Sun Mi Yen punches at a distance and hits a round copper plate on the mountain wall. The copper disc was engraved with the pattern of the sun and the moon, and it rattled under the force of the punch. It slowly rotated in a clockwise direction. A mountain wall door on the side instantly lifted up with a whoosh. Holy Sun Mi Yen roared, "Go in." Everyone dashed into the long tunnel without the slightest hesitation. Chapter 32:12. The gray-haired man narrowed his eyes and sneered. "Mi Yen, the temple has nurtured you for so many years, and this is how you repay us? You actually privately brought a group of outsiders to our temple's sacred land. You let these guys' filthy blood stain our bright and holy sacred land. You simply deserve to die." Holy Sun Mi Yen turned around and sneered at him. "Temple Master, the temple is no longer that bright and holy existence. Don't deceive yourself and others anymore." "Nonsense." The temple master threw a punch through the air. With a boom, it smashed into a nearby stone stool, instantly shattering the stone stool that was half a person's height. Everyone involuntarily shuddered in their hearts. Mo Lien's eyes flickered. This person is a peak venerated immortal. Although he looks like a middle-aged man, he's probably over 500 years old, the venerated Peach Blossom Immortal said softly. He pulled the little stoic behind him and instructed in a low voice, "When we tell you to run later, run inside quickly." The little fellow was a bit unhappy. "Then what about you guys?" "We'll come in a moment." Prince Mo smiled at her. "You have to be obedient, understand?" At this time, Holy Sun Mi Yen had already retreated into the tunnel with everyone. He sneered at the gray-haired man outside and said, "Nonsense? Ever since our temple was founded, we've always promoted our good to the outside world with the doctrine of brightness and upward progress. However, Temple Master, what you're doing is truly disdainful." Holy Sun Mi Yen said coldly, "Is our Sun Moon Temple's reputation not great enough in the 3 provinces? Is it not enough prestige? Why must we obey a cult organization? Why must we wallow in the mire with this cult organization? What do you know?" That Temple Master spread his arms with a cold expression. "Heavenly fortune is where the heavenly Tao lies in this world. It represents justice." Holy Sun Mi Yen looked at the palace lord in front of him, whose expression was slightly abnormal, with astonishment. Why did he feel like the Temple Master was brainwashed by something? Heavenly fortune represented heavenly Tao? Haha, who gave them the face to represent heavenly Tao? Did the heavenly Tao agree? "Mi Yen, it's not too late for you to turn back now," the Temple Lord said in a tempting tone. "Kill these people for me right now. You can immediately return to our divine palace and continue to be the holy son of our divine palace." Chen Baojia jumped and hurriedly retreated a dozen steps until she was behind Liang Qingqing and the others. Her body trembled as she shouted, He! Will he betray us? Listen to the Temple Lord. Come and kill us." Liang Qingqing was enraged by her petty behavior. She pushed her to the side and said, "Get lost." This woman still dared to slander the Holy Sun. Did she forget that she was the one who had shamelessly followed the Holy Sun all the way to seek protection? Now, in less than half a day, she immediately turned her back on him. Holy Sun Mi Yen smiled at him. Suddenly, he punched a wall lamp beside him. That wall lamp flickered and suddenly disappeared. At this time, that mountain wall door that had been lifted up suddenly fell down with a crash and crashed harshly onto the ground, directly sealing off the tunnel. "Let's go." Mo Lien gently raised her hand and directly pushed Sir Jojo towards Duan Yu. "Hurry." Arbor could not react in time. Chapter 32:13. Duan Yu, who was beside her, grabbed her by the arm and directly pulled her into a mad dash towards the depths of the tunnel. These guys truly coordinated well. Before Arbor could react, he was already pulled several dozen meters away by Duan Yu. Soon after, Siu, Liang Qingqing, and the rest also hastily dashed towards the depths of the tunnel. Chen Baojia was half a beat slower than everyone. She was so anxious and angry that her face was distorted from fright. She hastily chased after them and repeatedly shouted, "Wait for me, wait for me." Bam! A heavy impact came from outside the mountain wall. It was the sound of the spirit stone cannons hitting the mountain wall. Holy Sun Mi Yen was the first to throw out a defensive boundary to seal the mountain wall. Soon after, Mo Lien and Hu Jinshin also sent out a beam of sacred energy at the same time to reinforce that defensive boundary. The sound of explosions rang out incessantly. Holy Sun Mi Yen said calmly, "This path leads directly to the outside of the mountain. With their speed, it would take them about half an incense stick's worth of time to escape. As long as they left this tunnel and the dense forest where flying was inconvenient, the Holy Sun thought, Arbor would be able to summon that fire phoenix and swiftly escape with everyone. With the flying beast's speed, there was absolutely no way it could catch up to that fire phoenix. The prerequisite was that they had to delay the Hall Master here as much as possible. This old monster's cultivation realm is quite high, Hu Jinshin ridiculed, a harsh glint flashing through her pitch-black eyes. At their level of transcendent divine realm cultivation, even though they were in the same realm, the difference between the middle stage and late stage was like heaven and earth. Holy Sun Mi Yen said, "I remember that 1 year ago, his cultivation realm was still hovering around the middle stage of the venerable immortal realm. He stopped at the middle stage for about 200 years. Holy Sun Mi Yen sighed and said, with his aptitude, I thought that he would never be able to break through to the middle stage in his lifetime. I didn't expect that he actually jumped 2 minor realms in 1 year. He actually went straight to the peak just like that. Boom! The stone wall suddenly split apart, revealing the temple master's slightly distorted face. Want to know why? The temple master chuckled mischievously, and then the entire tunnel was filled with his maniacal laughter. Long live the heavenly fortune. It's the heavenly fortune that changed my fate. Ha! I also thought that I would stop here for the rest of my life. But I never imagined that I would actually have the chance to advance, and advance by 2 minor realms at that. As long as I continue to follow in the footsteps of Tian Yun, I will be able to ascend to a higher realm step by step, haha. You lot actually dare to hinder me from increasing my cultivation. You should all rest here. He's already gone mad. Mo Lien said faintly. Holy Sun Mi Yen suddenly pushes him and he jetchen, let's go. Then, he waved his palm at them and sent them flying a few feet away. At the same time, he punched a button beside him, and the sound of a spring activating could be heard in the distance. The entire passageway was suddenly filled with arrows and arrows, shooting at each other. The temple lord flicked the arrowhead in front of him with one hand and screamed with anger, Mi Yen! You traitor to God! You will receive the punishment you deserve. If your god is the Tianyun cult, Holy Sun Mi Yen sneered, I will betray you today. The temple lord roared and rushed into the passageway with people. He waved his hand vigorously, kill them for me. Chapter 32:14. Gurgle gurgle. A sound came from outside the stone wall. A dozen stern-looking temple guards slowly pushed a heavy spirit stone cannon into the passageway. One of them picked up 5 fist-sized spirit stones and placed them in the cannon. The cannon abruptly fired, and the long passageway shook violently. Holy Sun Mi Yen stood in the middle of the passageway with a cold and handsome face, and his sleeves fluttered despite the absence of wind. He gathered a wisp of holy power in one hand and suppressed the incoming spirit stone cannon in midair. Everyone saw with their naked eyes that the dazzling ball of light abruptly stopped. It made a light gurgling sound as it confronted Holy Sun Mi Yen's holy power. The temple master snorted coldly and spread open his arms as he roared furiously, a mantis trying to stop a chariot, courting death. As he roared, the entire passageway seemed to tremble and sway. Suddenly, a gush of underground water broke through the stratum and rolled upwards, directly attacking Holy Sun Mi Yen's chest. You, a mere spiritual venerable realm cultivator, also dares to chirp and curse in front of this lord. Today, I'll let you know what it means to say that there is always someone better than you. Ha! The temple master's head of white hair fluttered in the wind, his eyes glowed with a blood-red light, and his facial features were abnormally distorted. Bang! The surging water fiercely slammed into the defensive barrier that Holy Sun Mi Yen had set up. In just an instant, Holy Sun Mi Yen's defensive barrier was completely shattered by this water spirit energy. The power of a peak immortal venerable realm cultivator made people feel how insignificant all things in the world were. Everything was like an ant in front of him. Holy Sun Mi Yen flew backwards. Mo Lien and Ma Yingchen leaped up at the same time and reached out to support his retreating figure, barely managing to steady him. The water in front of them transformed into countless sharp claws that rapidly swept towards them. The little stoic and the others had already fled to the middle of the passageway. They felt the earth quaking and the mountain shaking violently. Their bodies swayed along with the mountain walls as they ran, and they felt sand and rocks falling from above their heads from time to time. Arbor kept looking back at the tunnel, but he didn't see Mo Lien and the other two. He started to panic for no reason. Jojo, don't worry, they will come over. Duan Yu comforted her softly. The little fellow's face was expressionless, and he felt a little worried for no reason. The few of them ran to the turning point and went around it. They found that the tunnel was going uphill. Everyone rushed towards the exit, not daring to stay for even a moment. Arbor was a little anxious, but she did not show it on her face. It was only when she turned back and saw Mo Lien and He Chen's clothes swaying around the corner that she let out a sigh of relief. With a wave of her small hand, a set of teleportation talisman arrays fell into her hand. Come here quickly. Currently, her Earth-rank teleportation glyph array could teleport her to a maximum of 50 kilometers away. But to be honest, a distance of 100 miles was nothing to a peak immortal venerable. They could kill their way over in a matter of minutes. As a result, the little stoic had never touched this talisman matrix. Furthermore, the number of people allowed to use the teleportation glyph array could not exceed 20. Their team naturally had more than 20 people. At this critical juncture, the little fellow couldn't care too much. In front of an outsider like Chen Baojia, the little stoic could only put Qi Xianxian and the others into the storage talisman with a frown. Only Situ Yi, Duan Mu Qing, Hidden Flower, Yu Xiu, and Mu Xingchen remained. Chapter 32:15. As a result, they moved much faster. The little stoic looked at Mo Lien and Ma Yinchen, who swiftly floated in front of her. She flicked open the talisman matrix and then hastily asked, "Where's Mi Yen?" For some reason, a bad premonition surfaced in her heart. She recalled Mi Yan's words. "Don't worry, I definitely have a way to make you guys leave." These words didn't sound right no matter how she listened to them. "Behind us, she'll be there soon." As soon as Mo Lien finished speaking, they simultaneously saw Mi Yen swiftly dashing in their direction. "Hurry!" The little stoic hastily opened the talisman matrix, and a halo instantly enveloped everyone. The temple master's figure emerged from around the corner. At the same time, he pushed the several hundred temple guards and 2 spirit stone cannons over at full speed by himself. Trying to run. The temple master shouted angrily. Like a monstrous wave, the rolling water crashed toward the transportation talisman matrix beneath everyone. Splash! As the water splashed everywhere, their figures simultaneously disappeared from the transportation talisman matrix. The temple master sneered and then raised his hands. A dozen or so ghost claws formed from water forcefully grabbed those temple guards and carried them forward at full speed. Some of the guards who couldn't withstand such a ferocious speed instantly felt their ears hurt, and some people even bled from their mouths and noses. When the temple master saw that these people were so useless, he naturally had the ghost claws crush them and toss them into the tunnel. The remaining guards all trembled and did their best to mobilize the defensive power around them so that they could withstand the pressure the temple master inadvertently emitted. They didn't want to be discarded here like trash. When Arbor and the others appeared 50 kilometers away, they had already reached the tunnel entrance. Everyone exited the transportation talisman matrix and swiftly dashed out of the temple's sacred ground. Chen Baojia hastily stumbled after them. She felt like she was about to be tortured to death this entire time. She clearly came here to search for treasures and seize the opportunity to get close to His Highness the Crown Prince. But when it came down to it, she discovered that she gained nothing other than numerous dangers along the way. "Let's go!" Holy Sun Mi Yen shoved Mo Lien and then turned to dash toward the tunnel entrance. "Old bastard! Where you going?" Arbor couldn't help but roar. Holy Sun Mi Yen couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. She turned to look at her and said expressionlessly, "Get out of here. I'll take care of my temple's matters myself." "Yen." Arbor glared at her. "Come back here. Piss off." Holy Sun Mi Yen waved his hand as he returned to the tunnel. At this moment, the temple lord had already caught up. His huge figure floated in the air as he laughed sinisterly. "None of you can leave." The temple lord's expression suddenly changed and he exclaimed, "Are you crazy?" Mi Yen slapped on a dragon head mechanism beside her, and a series of loud rumbling noises could be heard coming from the tunnel. The temple lord was on the verge of a mental breakdown. His eyes almost popped out as he stared at Mi Yen. His movements were faster than his brain, and he had already pounced towards the tunnel behind Mi Yen. At this moment, he couldn't care about anyone else. He only wanted to escape from this place as soon as possible and save his old life. Mayan was truly a fucking lunatic. He actually activated the mechanism of the 9 stars killing array. Chapter 32:16. He knew this disc array better than anyone else. It was the Death Talisman array of the Holy Land. Once it was activated, there was no possibility of stopping it. The whole Holy Land would sync together with this back mountain. Even if he was a peak immortal venerable, in front of the killing array, under the heavy force of nature, he could only die. At this time, the mechanism in the tunnel had been fully activated again. All kinds of hidden weapons and swords were flying back and forth in the tunnel, so fast that it was almost too much for the eyes to take in. The holy snow robe on Mi Yan's body had long been riddled with holes by swords, and her arms and body were full of scratches. Mi Yan. Arbor and Emolien rushed to the entrance of the tunnel, only to see that the dragon-breaking stone at the entrance had been urged to slide down quickly. Across the dragon-breaking stone, Arbor only saw Holy Sun Mi Yan smile at her and spit out the last word, "Get lost. You bastard. You hypocritical great Holy Sun. Do you think you can save the whole world?" Arbor was anxious and angry, and couldn't help but curse. Suddenly she saw a bright light, and with a whoosh, it almost shot her face. Xiao Mu reached out with her hand and saw a ring lying quietly in her palm. "You even handed over the inheritance, right?" Arbor was stunned, and secretly said "Chio" in her heart. A winding wooden vine was instantly thrown in from below the dragon-breaking stone, and wrapped around Holy Sun Mi Yan's wrist. At the same time, the aura of the spirit domain suddenly spread out. Mi Yan's face stiffened. The temple master screamed excitedly, "Spirit domain? Who's it? Who has the spirit domain?" If someone didn't have the spirit domain, how could there be the aura of the spirit domain opening at this time? The temple master didn't care about the several bloody holes in his body caused by the flying hidden weapons, and he rushed up excitedly. With a wave of his hand, a stream of water shot out, quickly wrapping Mi Yan's body. At the same time, the little water baby suddenly came out of the vines. The little fat hand slightly raised, and the stream of water that was coming toward them suddenly changed direction, and slapped at the temple master at a fast speed. "Go to hell." The little water child raised a huge fist. A fist that was more than 10 times the size of his body condensed from his tiny body and swung it at the temple master. Boom! The tunnel sank rapidly. Dragged by the 9 stars killing formation, the Divinity Palace master fell desperately towards the dark cave entrance. He roared angrily and wanted to jump up, but he was quickly whipped down by dozens of thick vines. Holy water. It was actually the power of holy water. Only the holy water could restrain his 9th layer spirit water. Unwilling, he was unwilling. There was holy water and the smell of spirit realm in front of him. All of this should have been his. With these supplementary items, he would definitely be able to leap from the peak of the immortal venerable realm. But now Holy Sun Mi Yan was dragged by the vines, and his figure was about to disappear in midair. The temple master roared with his last breath. The ghost claw formed by the water current grabbed at Holy Sun Mi Yan's head. The little water baby suddenly took a deep breath and absorbed all the water spirit power of the temple master. Then he opened his little mouth, and countless needle-sized ice thorns shot out, swarming at the temple master who was trapped in the cave. "Damn it!" The temple master shouted angrily. Chapter 32:17. He was unwillingly and helplessly dragged down by the 9 stars' fatal formation. The instant he fell into that underground cave, he tossed something up. Bang! That signal source rushed out of the dark cave and sprinkled light and shadow all over the sky under the blazing sun. The little water child swung a white bead in his hand and confirmed again, "Master, do we really have to do this?" "Explode!" Arbor shouted sternly. Bang! After another loud bang, the passageway sank down and disappeared. The entire mountain started to rapidly sink and slide, and the mountain walls abruptly collapsed in a burst of smoke. "Let's go!" Emolien scooped up the slightly pale Sir Jojo and flew up, summoning Seventh Swallow. Everyone followed suit and flew up with a swish. Seventh Swallow didn't need Emolien to say anything at all. With a flick of his tail, he directly shot up into the sky. Rocks kept falling down from both sides of the river. The scene before them was simply an unparalleled catastrophe. Everywhere was gray and hazy, and rubble rolled down. The golden dragon passed through the clouds and let out a furious roar. With a flick of his tail, he shattered a flying rock. After passing through the clouds several times, they got further and further away from that mountain range shrouded in gray mist. The little stoic's face was slightly pale. Ever since she sat on Seven Swallows' dragon back, she didn't speak again. Instead, she closed her eyes and meditated to regulate her breathing. Mo Lien and the others stifled their resentment, so they simply killed their way back and returned to the sky above the Sun Moon Temple. Since Tianyun wanted to start a war with them, then let him come. Layers of black flames floated around Mo Lien's body, rolling around her like giant black waves. A glaring silvery white flame swooped down like a belt of light and instantly smashed into the Sun Moon Temple's signboard. Boom! The remaining guards inside the temple hastily ran out and organized their troops, preparing to launch a counterattack. He saw a black flame spreading from the horizon, surging and covering the earth. From within, a huge black lotus rose. The flower bud closed, and the lotus was immersed in an ancient time. The ink-colored lotus disappeared in the blink of an eye, but the raging black fire quickly engulfed the house in front of him. Situ-E controlled fire, Duanmu Qin controlled wood, Hidden Flower's water spirit, and Yuxiu's fire spirit all rushed down at the same time. Miserable cries came from the crowd. Those desperados knew that they were about to die, but they still crazily stretched out their hands to the sky and shouted, "Long live Tianyun." It was completely hopeless. This thought appeared in everyone's mind, and then the spiritual power in their hands surged and swept down. Bang, 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 bang. The windows in the main hall instantly exploded into a series of sparks under the scorching flames. The middle-aged priest, Taishan, raised a long staff and ran out of the temple. He roared towards the sky, "You Godslayers have violated the heavenly Tao and ignored the mandate of heaven. In the end, you will receive a dark future and endless fear." On his body, a wisp of black fire slowly burned. Mo Lien looked at him coldly with a trace of coldness and killing intent in her eyes. "Your temple master is already dead." "Impossible, impossible!" Tai Shan screamed with a twisted expression. Although he could feel that his life force had reached its end under the burning of the black flame, he still couldn't believe that his temple master had been killed by this group of juniors. Chapter 32:18. The Temple Master was an almighty figure who was about to break through to the venerated immortal realm. He couldn't possibly die, and it was even more impossible for him to die at the hands of these nameless juniors. Arbor abruptly opened her eyes. Her eyes were very clear and bright. Although her complexion was a bit pale, her eyes were especially pitch black and deep. She looked at him with unconcealable contempt. "Your gods have long been exterminated by the greed and vanity in your hearts. You are the ones who have truly slain gods. Die, all of you!" Arbor shouted angrily. Her fingers drooped slightly, and countless vines madly sprouted from her fingertips. Subsequently, waves of sand scorpions emerged. They crawled down from the vines and flooded into the shrine. Taishan was entangled by the black flames and rolled on the ground in pain. Soon after, he was drowned by the sand scorpions that quickly crawled forward. He struggled and whimpered twice in the sand scorpions. After the sand scorpions left, only a string of broken bones could be seen on the ground. When Mo Lien saw that his little stoic was fine apart from her complexion still being a bit pale, he restrained his violent rage slightly. He suddenly turned his head and said to Yuxiu, "Where's Chen Baojia?" Everyone's expressions changed slightly. After exiting the tunnel, no one paid any attention to that woman. However, Chen Baojia must have seen every scene from when Jojo opened the spiritual domain to when he took away Holy Sun Mi Yen. If she wasn't killed to silence her, there was no guarantee that she wouldn't go out and spout nonsense. "This subordinate will go immediately." Yu Xiu and Hidden Flower naturally reacted especially quickly. Without needing the Crown Prince to say anything, the two immediately flew out. They summoned their flying beasts and rapidly followed the original path, rushing to the destroyed shrine's rear mountain. At the same time, little Taisui, Dao Wuji, and the others also rushed out of the paradise to help eliminate the root of the problem. Everything ended an hour later. The shrine was in ruins, and not a single person was left alive. Arbor coldly glanced at the ruins below and reached out to recall all the sand scorpions. Rubble and desolation filled the area. After everyone landed and stood on this pitch-black wasteland, they all peeked at the expressionless little stoic. Duan Yu secretly nudged Emo Lien with his elbow. The two of them exchanged a look. The little stoic is angry. Although this little fellow didn't say anything after that, they knew her too well. Looking at her tight little face, one could tell that she was in an extremely bad mood right now. You've offended him. Hurry up and beg for mercy. Otherwise, you'll be implicated. Duan Yu continuously signaled Emo Lien with his small eyes. The latter gave him a sideways glance and was a little confused. When did he provoke his wife? His wife was unhappy. Shouldn't it be because of Holy Sun Mi Yen? Arbor turned around and glanced at them. With a flick of his finger, everyone was pulled into Paradise Planet. The little fellow walked towards Holy Sun Mi Yen expressionlessly. At a glance, she saw that guy looking around in a daze. A stoic face. Why are you guys? Holy Sun Mi Yen turned his head and saw the little stoic walking towards him with layers of chilly intent. The little stoic walked faster and faster. In the end, she ran a few steps and rushed in front of Holy Sun Mi Yen. Without waiting for the Holy Sun to speak, she raised her small hand, and a crisp slap landed on his face. Chapter 32:19. Holy Sun Mi Yen stared at her in bewilderment, his eyes blinking nonstop. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines and discovered that the current atmosphere was very unfavorable due to the little stoic's oppressive aura. Who wants you to be a saint? Sir Jojo yelled angrily, Are you an idiot? Do you think you can save everyone in the world? I'm most annoyed by people like you who immediately push Sir Jojo back whenever something happens. The little stoic bellowed angrily, Do you think you're so capable? If you can do everything by yourself, then what do you need Sir Jojo to do? Everyone wanted to laugh when they heard her repeatedly call him Sir Jojo, but if they laughed now, they would be rebuked. We agreed to fight side by side. You throw this Sir back whenever you encounter danger. Arbor jabbed Mi Yan's shoulder with his index finger and said furiously, You, on the other hand, can just lie on the ground after sacrificing yourself and die without any regrets. You still want this Sir to owe you an enormous favor? In your dreams. Do you think it's so easy to owe me a favor? Holy Sun Mi Yen retreated step by step. Qi Xianxian moved to Arbor's side with small steps and whispered, Jojo, let's treat the Holy Sun's injuries first. The pitiful Holy Sun looked like he was about to die. Arbor's small face darkened as he expressionlessly roared at Holy Sun Mi Yen, Strip! Everyone's mouths twitched. Holy Sun Mi Yen even stretched out his arms with an exaggerated expression and crossed them in front of his chest 5 minutes later. Holy Sun Mi Yen, whose entire body was smeared with ointment, continuously curled up and exclaimed, Hey hey, stoic face, be gentler, gentler, gentler. My arm is seriously injured. The little stoic's small face was cold as she bluntly scolded as she bandaged him, Aren't you illuminated by holy light? Holy Sun Mi Yen was embarrassed by the rebuke. I didn't know you had a spirit domain. It seemed that Lord Jojo had been on guard against him all this time. Perhaps it was because he was here that the little stoic didn't open the spirit domain and put everyone inside. Of course, there was also Chen Baojia. Thinking of this, the saint suddenly felt a little wronged. Then he said, That's Chen Baojia. You want to use the heart of a saint to save her life again? Holy Sun Mayan felt a bit wronged. I'm just asking. Why do you keep attacking me? I'm giving it back to you. The little stoic's face was taut as she irritably threw something at his face. When Holy Sun Mi Yen took that spatial ring, he couldn't help but be astonished. A little stoic, aren't you the one who loves money the most? A gentleman loves wealth, but he obtains it in a proper way. The little fellow said coldly and stiffly, Who wants your inheritance? Keep it for yourself and pass it on to your disciples or children." Sir Holy Sun immediately put on a pure and proud expression. "This holy sun serves my God with all my heart, so how can I have children?" Arbor paused for a few seconds before saying, "We've already destroyed your family's shrine." The holy sun also fell silent. A moment later, everyone once again appeared on the scorched earth left behind by the shrine. Holy Sun Mi Yin didn't say anything with his back facing everyone. Everyone knew that he was naturally in a bad mood. After all, this was his homeland where he grew up, but now it had become like this. Chapter 32:20. No one spoke until about half an incense stick's worth of time had passed. Suddenly, several shouts were heard in the wind. "Holy Sun! Lord Holy Sun!" 2 priests and 3 temple guards put away their flying spirit beasts with a look of pleasant surprise and hurriedly ran over while gasping for breath. Holy Sun Mi Yen turned to look at them, his voice slightly weathered. "The temple no longer exists. You can also leave on your own." He knew the background of these people very well. It was impossible for them to be related to a cult like the Heavenly Fate sect. The priests and guards looked at each other in dismay and hurriedly knelt down in front of Holy Sun Mi Yen. "Wherever Holy Sun is, the temple will always exist. We are willing to follow Holy Sun." Holy Sun Mi Yen looked at them for a long time before saying, "You have followed them all the way, so you should also know. The temple master of the temple betrayed our faith, betrayed the gods, and turned to a cult called the Heavenly Fate sect. That's good too." Holy Sun Mi Yen slightly raised his head and looked at the scorching sun in the sky. He faintly smiled. "If we don't perish in the ashes, we will be reborn in the ashes. As long as you are here and I am supporting the temple, it will rise in the end." The priests and guards nodded one after another, joy of being reborn after a calamity in their eyes. The cry of flying spirit beasts came from the sky again. Everyone turned to look and saw that Yu Xiao and Hidden Flower had returned. Upon seeing the 2 people's unsightly expressions, Mo Lien understood what had happened. He creased his brows and asked, "They ran away?" Yu Xiao nodded. "I don't know if they were covered by the mountain." This subordinate and Hidden Flower searched the back of the mountain and didn't find any signs of living people. Mo Lien's handsome face was calm, and he muttered to himself for a moment before faintly nodding. "Let's go back to the academy first." Just now, the temple master of the temple had thrown out a signal before he died. Presumably, the Heavenly Fate sect would send people to check it out soon. It wasn't that he was afraid of them, but after being tossed around for so long, everyone was in a bit of a mess. He really didn't want to argue with them anymore. Besides, Jojo's face was still a bit pale. It was better to go back and recuperate first. The academy had Yun Piaomiao, this great Buddha, keeping watch. Even if the enemy came to attack, let Yun Piaomiao block it. Who asked him to be the dean? Principal Yun, who was drinking tea and reading at the misty peak of the royal school, suddenly sneezed and looked around with a puzzled expression. "Jojo." Mo Lien had just called out when he saw his wifey turning her head to face him with the back of her head. He cursed in his heart and hurried to her side. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. "Jojo, your husband swears that if we encounter any danger in the future, I won't let you run away alone. Duan Yu, Rotten Peach Blossom, and I will run with you. Let's run together and advance and retreat together, all right?" Holy Sun Mi Yen immediately came back to his senses and felt somewhat stifled by this display of affection. So it turned out that Prince Mo, Duan Yu, and the others had implicated her in the scolding from Sir Jojo just now. Sir Jojo was scolding him along with Prince Mo, Duan Yu, and the others. Why was he so unlucky? Sir Jojo expressionlessly glanced at that man. She should have flared up at the Red River Canyon, but after her body grew up, she inexplicably forgot about this matter. He let Sir Jojo run away first every time they encountered danger. Wasn't this proof of his capability? Did he think Sir Jojo wouldn't get angry? Ignore him. Chapter 32:21. Prince Mo hastily shook his wifey's body and repeatedly sent Duan Yu a look. Duan Yu obediently stood on the side without moving. He didn't want to go up and get rebuked. This scoundrel. Prince Mo glared at Duan Yu with all his might before switching to a beaming expression at his wife. Jojo, Duan Yu knows his mistake. Duan Yu? How could he be wrong? Weren't all these rotten ideas Mo Lien, that imbecile, the one who came up with them? For example, you take Jojo away, rotten peach blossom, and I will cover the rear. Wasn't that what he was trying to convey with his eyes? Why was he pushing the blame onto him now? It's all rotten peach blossom's fault for coming up with such rotten ideas. It was all his ideas time and time again. Thankfully, Mo Lien didn't make him the scapegoat in front of him. But how innocent was the venerable peach blossom immortal just because he, little Tai Sui, and the others were still wandering around the temple to check out the terrain? He was used as a shield by Prince Mo. Duan Yu twitched his mouth and flashed to Arbor's side. He said with a grin, Jojo, let's go back. I'm a bit hungry. He should be hungry after all this time. It would have been fine if he didn't mention it, but now that he did, Sir Jojo also felt his stomach rumble. If you two make eyes at each other again in the future, I dare you to throw me away. Sir Jojo harumphed and turned to roar at Mo Lien, don't keep making rotten peach blossom the scapegoat. Duan Yu blinked and glanced at Mo Lien. Mo Lien immediately rolled her eyes at him and grumpily said, with her eyes, who the hell is making eyes at you? What are you two talking about now? Sir Jojo abruptly turned around and grumpily looked at them with his large eyes. No, nothing. Mo Lien quickly strode forward and pulled his wifey's hand. He said with a chuckle, Duan Yu told me that he'll be roasting the colorful divine fish in a bit. The little stoic's eyes brightened slightly, and she feigned a reluctant expression. All right, then let him do it. Originally, I wanted to grill it for you. She also felt that Duan Yu's roasted meat tasted better than hers. Mo Lien curled her lips, and Duan Yu looked at them exasperatedly. Soon, the venerable peach blossom immortal, little Tai Sui, and the others split up and returned. He said, the surroundings have been cleaned up. Let's go. Holy Sun Mi Yen covered his broken arm and looked back at the ruins. Then he followed the crowd and jumped onto the back of the golden dragon. The group flew in the direction of the academy. After flying for nearly 2 hours, they left the vicinity of the temple. Only when they returned to the ruined Red River Canyon and entered the no-fly zone did they casually find a place to rest and get some food to fill their stomachs. After finishing their meal, they set off again. Arbor activated the teleportation array, found a general direction, and teleported to the royal school. In the evening, a man wearing a silver devil mask led a dozen of his trusted subordinates onto the scorched earth of the Sun Moon Temple, which was now in ruins. Looking at everything before him, he couldn't help but sigh ruefully. Ruined, completely ruined. Truly a group of vicious and merciless people. Look at what the Sun Moon Temple had become. Reporting to Hallmaster, the rear mountain has been razed to the ground. The eyes of the trusted aide who came to report also flickered with disbelief. Have you found the Hallmaster's corpse? The ghoul mask Hallmaster took a deep breath. When he opened his eyes again, a shrewd glint flitted across them. Broken dreams. Chapter 32-22. The temple master of the Sun Moon Temple was dead. His life lantern hanging in the organization was completely extinguished at noon today. Thinking of the huge price they had spent on him, the Ghostface Hall Master had a headache. This was a peak immortal venerable that the organization had spent a lot of money to raise. How could he suddenly die like this? Something must have happened that he didn't know about. The Ghostface Hall Master looked coldly at the scorched earth in front of him. The temple's surroundings had been burned to the point that its original appearance couldn't be seen. A few people who were sorting out the remains on the scorched earth would occasionally pick up 1 or 2 bones from the pile of ashes. The Ghostface Hall Master looked at everything with a cold expression. He took a deep breath and exhaled. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he said coldly, "No need to clean it up." He had already used his divine sense to scan the surroundings. There was no one alive, so there was no point in cleaning it up. Hallmaster, the way these people died is a bit strange. A black-clothed masked man approached him and said softly, Their bones seem to have been gnawed by something. I can't find a single complete piece. The Ghostface Hall Master frowned slightly. Let's go to the back of the mountain to take a look. The Ghostface Hall Master flicked his sleeves and led a dozen of his trusted subordinates toward the back of the mountain. He wouldn't have known if he didn't look, but when he did, even though the Ghostface Hall Master was a little wary, he still looked at the ruined mountain range in shock. The extent of the destruction here was simply beyond his expectations. Compared to the scorched earth of the temple, at least half of the mountain range that stretched for thousands of miles had sunk because of the earth's sinkhole. Inexplicably, the Ghostface Hall Master thought of that expressionless face. Then he shook his head. Impossible. How could this little guy be so capable? Could it be that he could move mountains and break rivers? He didn't really become a god. The Ghostface Hall Master thought for a while and secretly curled his lips. Then he ordered his subordinates, "Go search around and see if you can find the Temple Master's body." His body had been improved many times by drugs. Those drugs were unique things that could only be found by chance. Speaking of which, the Temple Master's body should be 10 times stronger than ordinary cultivators. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he had copper skin and iron bones. But such a person had died so suddenly. What was even stranger was that the life lantern left in the headquarters did not capture any useful information. This meant that when the Temple Master's body was destroyed, his soul was instantly and mercilessly destroyed. There was no time for the life lantern to record what had happened. When the Ghostface Hall Master thought of this, he felt a little depressed. The Temple Master's body was still useful to him. It would be great if he could get it back. The Ghostface Hall Master's trusted subordinates followed a vague aura and began to search around the entrance of the passageway. "Hall Master," one of them called out. The Ghostface Hall Master followed him and looked at the pitch-black pit with a complicated expression. The Holy Land's 9 stars killing array must have been activated. The Ghostface Hall Master couldn't figure it out. The Holy Land was not a place that just any outsider could enter. That is to say, someone brought Arbor and the others here, and then this place became the burial place of the Temple Lord. Mien. Ghostface Hall Master gritted his teeth. Mayan must have brought them here. Chapter 32-23. If it weren't for Mi Yen, no one would know the location of the temple's sacred ground. The black-clothed masked man next to Ghostface Hall Master also said, "It must be Holy Sun Mi Yen who brought them here and even plotted to open the 9 stars fatal formation, killing the Temple Master of the temple. This person has opposed us time and time again. Hall Master, we definitely can't let him off." Ghostface Hall Master glanced at him and said aloofly, "Then according to what you say, what should we do? How can we capture him and not let him off?" That person was clearly taken aback by the question. Presumably, he was just talking big and didn't actually think of a way to deal with Holy Sun Mi Yen. Ghostface Hall Master couldn't help but sneer at him. "Do your own thing. You don't need to meddle in other matters." He didn't need this kind of flashy guy who only knew how to bootlick by his side. What he needed was someone who knew how to do things. Soon, Ghostface Hall Master's dozen subordinates all returned to his side after checking the surroundings. "Hall Master, this mountain range has completely collapsed." A trusted aide who rushed over to report hastily said, "This subordinate has checked the surroundings and didn't find any trace of the Temple Master of the temple." Hearing this, the Ghostface Hall Master nodded in understanding. In truth, he already had this worst-case scenario in his mind. It was just that he hadn't given up previously. It was also relatively difficult for the 9 stars fatal formation to instantly kill the Temple Master of the temple. What he was more curious about now was how did the Stoic Faces group possess the strength to annihilate a venerable at the peak of the immortal venerable realm in the blink of an eye without the slightest ability to resist. He suspected that this Stoic Face definitely had a secret. The little Stoic naturally had a gargantuan secret. When the little girl first came to the Divine Province, she once instantly traversed the void and wandered through the starry sky for a long time. At that time, the Dantian star domain had once taken in 3 spirit domains from the starry sky like bandits and formed 3 nameless stars. These 3 nameless stars had never been reclaimed from the beginning to the end. As always, there was nothing on them. That was why the little stoic didn't hesitate to toss out one of them in the nick of time at the entrance of the Temple of the Gods' Holy Land's passageway and had the little water child use it to kill the peak immortal venerable realm temple master of the gods. Everything was just worldly possessions. Losing a nameless star could kill an extremely dangerous peak immortal venerable realm cultivator and even completely kill him. Even his soul force fragments would disappear from this world. To the little stoic, this was an extremely profitable transaction. On the other side, Chen Baojia had long frantically escaped from the tunnel entrance while the little stoic's group was fighting the temple master of the temple. Later, when the mountain collapsed, she was buried by a few pieces of thick earth and rocks. Because she was buried deep, she was able to avoid the search of the hidden flower constellation. She didn't know that she had unintentionally escaped a calamity by burying herself in this mountain rock. 2 days later, she used all her spiritual power to dig her way out of the pile of rocks. The moment she saw the sun, she actually had the feeling of crying tears of joy. It was too difficult. She wanted to return to the capital immediately to talk to her father about this matter. The temple master of the Temple of the Gods had personally said that this stoic face actually had a spirit domain on him. A spirit domain was a land of heavenly fortune. It was usually buried among spiritual mountains and clear waters, and could only be encountered by chance. However, the stoic face actually had a spirit domain on him. Chapter 32-24. It had to be known that mystic cultivators could open their inner worlds on their own, which was already the envy of most normal people. A normal inner world was 3 to 5 cubic meters, and a larger one might be a dozen or so cubic meters. This was already pretty good. As for this stoic face, she actually had a portable spirit domain? Chen Baojia's breathing gradually became hurried. What kind of existence was a portable spirit domain? Chen Baojia actually wasn't sure, but she was certain that this portable spirit domain was definitely much larger than everyone's inner worlds. No wonder this stoic face could always pull out some strange things, and the number of ling beasts around him was several times more than normal Xiuzhe. Could it be that she hid these things in this portable spirit domain? If she could obtain this portable spirit domain, Chen Baojia's complexion became abnormally flushed, and her breathing became increasingly heavy. Heavens, she was about to go crazy with jealousy. How could there be someone with such exceptional luck in this world? Chen Baojia crawled out of the mound with disheveled hair and a dirty face and walked unsteadily on the rubble ruins. Looking at the desolate scene in front of her, she really couldn't describe the feeling in her heart. Was she excited to discover the little stoic secret? Or was she angry to discover that she was the only one left in this place? She, Chen Baojia, had worked hard to follow the team to the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm to search for treasures, but in the end, she didn't even see a single strand of treasure. Instead, she was so poor that she was almost buried under the mountain and almost couldn't get out. It was truly infuriating to compare oneself to others. At this time, Chen Baojia suspiciously felt that Arbor definitely obtained some benefits from the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm. Otherwise, why would the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm suddenly collapse? It must be because Arbor took too many treasures from inside, causing the spirit energy that was enough to support the Mystery Realm to suddenly decrease, causing the entire Mystery Realm to collapse and be destroyed. It had to be said that Chen Baojia's suspicions were somewhat on point. Xiao Mu had taken everything in the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm. She hadn't taken too much, as Chen Baojia had thought. Chen Baojia walked on a barren mountaintop, her heart filled with apprehension as she walked. As far as her eyes could see, this place had inexplicably become a concave valley. There were rugged rocks everywhere, and she couldn't find a proper path. She coughed a few times and raised her hand to wipe her messy gray hair. Just as she was about to release her spirit beast, she heard a laugh coming from behind her, which immediately made her hair stand on end. Sister Baojia, what a coincidence! Ba Shu jumped down from the flying beast and ran forward with a smile. He hugged Chen Baojia's body and his eyes flashed. Chen Baojia didn't look like a pretty girl at this moment. In fact, at this time, Chen Baojia was not only dirty, but her hair was also drooping on her forehead. She looked no better than a beggar on the street. However, thinking of her enchanting figure, Ba Shu didn't dislike her appearance at this time. He put his arms around her waist and said with a smile, "Sister Baojia, you see, we are quite fated to meet each other. How about it? Why don't you accompany big brother Ba Shu home? You don't have anything to do anyway." Chen Baojia was shocked. She struggled violently and exclaimed, What are you doing?" This person was like a big head fly, buzzing around her all day long. She was really annoyed to death. However, his cultivation level was higher than hers, so resistance was futile. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.